A blinding, incredibly bright light pursued the young girl. Opening her mouth in a silent scream, she could only watch as this glow slowly but surely consumed her. A weak, barely perceptible pulse, and a quiet squeak coming from the cardiograph. Hospital walls, for the girl lay unconscious in the bed. Life in her weak body was supported by an oxygen mask. A dark-haired guy bent over her, stroked his pale and cold-to-the-touch face and straightened his thick bangs. His sister always liked to go against her brother, and now she doesn't even react to his bullying. It's so uninteresting. The stranger barely whispered bitter words, only now, when his sister definitely couldn't hear him, did he find the courage to admit that she was not the only one in the family whose abilities had awakened. He himself woke up, and now he came for a reason, or rather, not only to check on his unconscious sister. His ability is stealing. The guy can steal the abilities of others. And now a soft blue pearl was flickering above the girl's head. D-rank ability Steal Complete Mental Blast. Sends a mental blast to attack enemies. Weak, but it's a sister ability and has a special meaning. The pearl levitated above the guy's palm. He was surprised at the acquisition, because if it was stronger, then Trisha would not have instantly turned into an ice statue from an unintentional attack. The guy wondered if it was really unintentional, because the distance to Trisha was so far. Screams were heard from the corridor, female and male voices vying with each other, shouting, calling someone a murderer. They were objected to. They said that that person had saved more people. They called to calm down, because it is impossible to control everything at once. It so happened that Miss Sinclair was just in that store. It was the mother and father of a brother and sister. The lawyer of the man who almost killed their daughter was now defending him, saying that they did not want this, because heroes are not gods, and they are already trying their best. Sometimes they can accidentally harm others while fighting the monster. The woman sadly covered her face with her hands. Her husband threw the documents from the lawyer on the floor and shouted that he would not sign these papers. Let him take his stinking money and get lost. A drop of sweat ran down the lawyer's temple. He vividly imagined what consequences awaited his client. The next moment, the door to the hospital room slammed, and the guy's hand reached out to the tablet with documents. His father tried to reason with his son, appealing to reason. Does he really want to exchange Trisha's life for money? But he put his hand on the man's shoulder and squeezed lightly, answering that his sister was in a vegetative state, and their family needed money to provide their sister with everything she needed. Although conflicting feelings fought within my father, he did not answer. The words immediately stuck in his throat. While the parents hugged each other and tried to console each other, their son demanded additional conditions from the lawyer. The man, soaring in spirit, leaned forward with interest. The guy wanted the hero who harmed his sister to apologize in person, face to face. Moreover, the Berkshire Company should also make an official apology. The lawyer's plump body shook with disappointment, and he asked if it would be possible to apologize on his behalf. But the guy answered firmly, the hero needs to come here in person. The lawyer began to apologize profusely. The A-rank hero's schedule is overloaded. David Evans Jr. would like to personally apologize, but he is too busy fighting and cannot come here in person. In addition, they are willing to pay $100,000 more as compensation. His interlocutor grinned when he heard the proposal. Quickly scribbling on the papers with a pen, he, without looking at the lawyer, handed over the tablet, who ingratiatingly accepted the documents. The windows of the multi-story hospital illuminated the empty street. The lawyer, in high spirits, called the client to inform him that he had settled everything. He only had to add another $100,000 in compensation. At the other end of the line, a smiling guy, drinking a soda, praised the man, promising that his secretary would send the money later. The lawyer hung up the phone and chuckled. Yes, heroes like to relax. If only he could awaken his ability too. The brunette returned to his sister's bed, and, as if she could hear him, asked not to be blamed for signing the contract, especially in such conditions, but the sister should not worry. He will find out the whole truth because he does not believe that it was all unintentional. Clutching his coat in his hands, the guy promised that he would change this world, because some awakened ones are not worthy of being called heroes. The guy's name was Adam Sinclair. He worked as a trainee reporter, and his sister Trisha, according to eyewitnesses and the savior himself, was unintentionally harmed by an A-rank hero. To implement his plan, Adam moved away from his parents to another area. In Albuquerque, the guy will be able to carry out his plans without disturbing his grief-stricken parents. Adam rented a room in a small dorm, and now, Entering the common living room, he met two girls. Sitting on the sofa, she immediately introduced herself and her friend, a pretty blonde. Another neighbor was not home yet. The girls' names were Mary Perry and Karen Walt. The latter, a little older, asked what his name was. The guy introduced himself with a bored look. Mary smiled sweetly and offered to celebrate the arrival of a new housemate, because this did not happen often. Karen said she would be in the library since she had just started university, so they could have fun without her. Adam turned around with his suitcase and went into the room, answering on the fly that there was no need for this. He had only recently arrived here, was tired, and wanted to rest. The girls looked at him with puzzled looks. The guy, without unpacking his suitcase or taking off his outerwear, fell onto the bed with his arms outstretched. Then he took out his mobile phone and went to a video hosting site, turned on a video where heroes fight monsters. Quite a lot of people have already watched it. He noticed that many videos had appeared explaining the abilities, when a black portal, with bright lightning around it, appeared on the phone screen that someone had filmed in the sky. Adam did not remember when this happened, but dark portals suddenly began to appear all over the world, through which monsters arrived on the planet. For example, huge saber-toothed wolves with glowing eyes, as if enlarged several times by the force of a net. The planet could stop the invasion of these monsters only thanks to those with abilities. Those who were lucky were called heroes and idly faded at every victory, like celebrities on carpets, where in the case of heroes there were destroyed roads. To prevent hunters from abusing their abilities, the ability law was passed, which stated that only hunters who passed the test and were certified as a hero could use their abilities. Taking a closer look, the brunette realized that he was watching the video in which Trisha was wounded by the hero. Adam exhaled heavily and locked the screen of his mobile phone. Now he didn't find anything suspicious. It's better to study the video again tomorrow. Accidentally glancing at the screen and seeing the time, the guy realized it was already 2:30 in the morning, and he still needed to brush his teeth and wash his face, because a lot of work was planned tomorrow. The brunette quietly slipped out of the room, throwing a towel around his neck, and carrying a glass of toothpaste and a brush in his hands. Suddenly he heard a noise ahead, and suddenly raised his head. A dark-haired girl walked from her room, clinging to the wall and barely moving her feet. The guy immediately guessed that this was the last neighbor. The stranger did not notice anything around her, and was clearly out of her mind. It seemed that she was completely drunk, judging by her blush. Adam said hello according to all the rules of etiquette. The girl tried to answer him something, but immediately covered her mouth with her hand, trying to stop gagging, then very quickly asked permission to be the first to use the restroom. The guy didn't even think to object to her. Before she could close the door, she fell to her knees in front of the toilet and threw out the entire contents of her stomach there. After a few minutes she felt much better. The neighbor turned away and put her elbow on the headband to sit more comfortably, and probably fall asleep in this position. Adam immediately reached out to her, asking if everything was okay. Then he hesitated, stopped, thinking about something. A man should not come too close to a girl in such a state. He knocked on the door of another neighbor, Mary Perry. She opened the door, yawning, and with her eyes closed asked why little Adam was not sleeping when it was already so late. He apologized for the disturbance and explained the situation, offering to help the drunk girl, because he, a man, was not very comfortable offering his help. Mary, yawning widely again, waved her hand because this was not the first time. It was better to leave her there, especially since it was already very late, and she had to get up for work tomorrow morning. A moment later, the door slammed in the brunette's face. It seemed that only he could help the girl. Returning to the bathroom, he found her sitting in the same position. He apologized, but rather to himself, since the neighbor was clearly fast asleep. Adam picked her up and immediately felt it. The brain overload ability had been discovered. So the discovery, this girl is the owner of an F-rank ability. Brain overload puts the brain into overdrive for a short period of time, greatly increasing the brain's processing abilities, an ability the owner doesn't seem to know she has, although she feels like she has good potential for development. The guy carefully put his neighbor on the sofa, covered her with his coat, and thought that this strange girl might think that she was very smart, and if she studied well, she would become the best. However, Adam decided to steal the ability. In the future he will definitely repay it somehow. Having successfully completed what he started, the brunette smiled to his thoughts. I wonder what effect this will have on him. 2 pearls, The mental abilities of Brain Overload and Mental Attack levitated on Sinclair's palms, and the system asked if he wanted to combine them. The guy said loudly, "Unite," and the pearls flew up, leaving colored trails in the air. Then they collided with each other, merging into one. The combination of abilities is completed. The red pearl fell into the brunette's palm. Now Adam had a D+ rank ability Super Brain, could automatically send mental attacks, received a significant increase in his ability to calculate and deduce. However, this ability must be used wisely. The guy thought he could find some clues in the video of the incident in which Trisha was injured. The next morning he was awakened by a knock on the door. Yawning loudly, Adam opened the door. Having finally woken up, he was dumbfounded when he saw his guest. The beautiful neighbor, whom he had carefully put to bed yesterday, now stood in front of him. Having introduced herself, she handed over her coat and thanked him for his help. The guy was speechless for a second, admiring Lily Romero. Introducing himself in response, he noticed to himself that the neighbor looked very innocent. He realized that he had taken away her ability, although Lily did not know she had one, but still asked if the girl felt discomfort. She smiled sweetly, answering that everything was fine and there was no need to worry about her. Having accepted the coat, the guy returned the smile. "That's good." The front door suddenly opened and a plump guy, Adam's friend, walked into the hallway, loudly greeting him. Lily and Adam turned their heads sharply in his direction. The sudden guest opened his mouth at the sight of the charming girl. He pointed his finger at his friend and, without any embarrassment, shouted that he was meeting someone behind his back. The brunette immediately tried to justify himself, telling him not to talk nonsense, because this is his neighbor with whom he lives. Opening and closing his mouth like a fish, the guy thought that he had acted recklessly when he rented the entire apartment. He immediately smoothed his hair, coughed into his fist, and collected his thoughts. George Ripley, that was his name, was Adam's friend and colleague. He extended his hand to the dumbfounded girl and introduced himself. She politely introduced herself in response and shook the outstretched hand, understanding what would follow. As expected, George, without letting go of the girl's hand, immediately offered the girl a photo shoot, because with the help of his ability to take photographs and shoot videos with his bare hands, he could take a couple of beautiful photographs. Lily didn't know how to get rid of such annoying attention. Fortunately, Adam came to her aid and pulled away his friend, impressed by the female beauty, citing the fact that Ripley had come to pick him up to take him to the editorial office, and they were on their way. The guy did not give up, and tried to return to the conversation with the beauty, but nothing worked out for him. The Louisville Publishing Company was in full swing. Adam did not waste time and turned on the desired video on the screen of his work monitor. There, a hero in a special elaborate costume was circling with might and main around a huge wolf. Using his ability, he released long magical ropes from his palms, and they pinned the monster to the ground, digging straight into his body. Super brain deduction activated, the guy peered carefully at the screen. He analyzed what he saw with all his might, reading every movement and blow. Suddenly he tensed, and his eyes caught on something. Adam noticed the strange movement of the hero. He put his hand to his mouth, and the guy thought it was familiar. He didn't have time to fully understand what he had seen when George suddenly distracted him by nudging him, sitting down in a chair next to him, and cheerfully asked why Adam wasn't interested in flirting with girls, especially with such a beautiful girl like Lily. Laughing, the guy assured that if his friend didn't start, he would do it himself. Adam did not appreciate the joke and replied that he and Lily were just neighbors. There was no need to go too far. Jolly George said that from flatmates to bedmates is very easy, and he can teach a friend if he doesn't know how. Suddenly, a crash and screams were clearly heard outside the window, signaling the appearance of a monster. Ripley instantly stuck to the glass. Not far from the editorial building, a portal opened in the sky, and from there, moving many pink tentacles, he appeared the one-eyed killer. Like a huge jellyfish, the monster walked through the city with the help of its appendages, destroying everything in its path. People ran away, desperately trying to escape. The one-eyed killer sank down, his disgusting body pulsating. At the same time an announcement was heard from the loudspeakers. A monster has appeared, a B-rank disaster, go to the nearest shelter, heroes are on the way. And indeed, jumping over the boulders of destroyed asphalt, one of the heroes appeared on the horizon. An athletic, large man in a red suit that covered his entire body slowly moved towards the monster. It was the superhero of hot and sour noodles, urging citizens not to be afraid. He would not allow anything to happen to the city of Louisville. The crowd stopped abruptly when they heard a familiar voice. It was the B-rank hero, the Superman of hot and sour noodles. He had come to save them. Compared to the one-eyed assassin, Superman looked very tiny. George read information about the monster using his ability, creating a tiny virtual screen right in his hands. The one-eyed killers have not only defensive power, but also a psychopathic melee ability. It will be very difficult for 18 spiders to cope with him, and the superhero noodles may even lose. The guy looked around and didn't see his friend. The thought flashed that Adam was running very fast. He pointed the camera and aimed with his eye, giggling. Ordinary people are so weak. It's time to make some money with your ability. A fire butterfly flew over the Superman of hot and sour noodles, a hero of the C rank. A long-haired, red-haired girl in a tight jumpsuit that favorably emphasized her figure. The butterfly's wings were made of fire itself. She asked if the elder needed help. He, looking back, said that the girl arrived on time. Let her attack the monster while he holds it. The fire butterfly flashed its eyes and nodded. Right now, there was a heroic live subscription broadcast all over the city, hosted by director Zachary and Nicholas Roserf. The director commented on what was happening in a well-trained voice, as if he was not watching a bloody battle, but was sitting at a football match. The superhero of hot and sour noodles, a melee hero, was very selfish and narcissistic when he first appeared. His partner enthusiastically asked why Gregory was giving such feedback. He replied that to activate his ability, the hero needs to eat a bowl of hot and sour noodles, so he usually appears after the other heroes have already exhausted the monster, and then kills it. Nicholas Roserf laughed, saying that as expected of a director, he always divulges information that other people don't know. The man coughed into his fist and suggested stopping the chatter and watching the live broadcast of the battle. It seems that everything was not going so smoothly. The hero jumped and, as planned, flew straight onto the monster's body. He clenched his teeth, running his elbow as hard as he could right into the one-eyed assassin. They were immediately surrounded by many golden butterflies. The fire butterfly flew closer and shouted to the elder to move aside. Generating flames in her hand, she pointed her hand directly at the monster. A second later, a powerful stream of fire fell on the alien. He was pinned to the ground. The tentacles began to tremble in pain. Commentators were arguing, looking at the screen, whether the monster's life was coming to an end or not. Nicholas looked in surprise at the director, who doubted victory, and asked why. The man replied that monsters are also smart, and he did not see a single sign of anxiety in this monster. The superheroes stood nearby, watching the one-eyed killer burn in flames. There was a crackling sound and the flames split into pieces. A safe and sound killer crawled out from there, changing the color and shape of his body. The hero of hot and sour noodles cursed. The alien has evolved, and now his body has a fire-resistant shield. The butterfly tearfully asked him to hold out longer, because some time would pass before the others arrived. The man lowered his head, remembering the conversation that was important to him. The head, sitting at the table, lectured the superhero. He had already reached the peak of his career as a professional hero. If he wants to break through and become one of the most famous stars of the company, then he can no longer lose. Because if he fails, his fame will decrease. Resources will go to younger heroes. The hero of hot and sour noodles firmly decided that he would never lose his place in the company. Adam stood very close to the thick of things and peered anxiously at the heroes. It did not escape a careful glance that the superhero of hot and sour noodles, unnoticed by the others, quickly swallowed some kind of blue glowing pill. Adam opened his eyes. He had already seen such a pill once. At that moment, the tentacle grabbed the fire butterfly in its vice. She, calling on the elder, tried to get out of the grip. The townspeople could see with their own eyes how the heroine, wrapped in a huge tentacle, was weakening. Some commented on what was happening. The one-eyed killer threw the butterfly, tightly bound in his paws, up, and she screamed heart-rendingly, with the last of her strength, that she did not want to die. Suddenly, one of the monster's tentacles was torn in half. The huge eye looked around the space around itself in bewilderment. The stranger was confused and released his prey. The butterfly was immediately picked up by the superhero of hot and sour noodles, landing heavily on the asphalt. In the studio, Nicholas Roserf slammed his fist on the table in joy. He exclaimed admiringly into the microphone that this superhero could only stay in fighting shape for 15 minutes. But this time he lasted, and became even stronger than before. The guy rose from his seat and triumphantly raised his fist up. The hero has not aged yet. Gregory straightened his tie. Apparently he was embarrassed for his judgment. The man muttered that this was quite unexpected. Before he could finish speaking, his colleague was glued to the screen, screaming that the one-eyed killer was attacking the hero of hot and sour noodles. Right now, the alien and the hero were opposite each other. The one-eyed monster was the first to rush towards his opponent, but his tentacles collided with a bright blue glow, the superpower of the hero hot and sour noodles. The man flew forward, electrified, glowing with power, and mockingly asked if this was really all the monster was capable of. Something was brewing. Superman decided to finish off the one-eyed killer with his main weapon. The monster's eye became twice as large after seeing what he was about to experience. Hot and sour kick in action. Having hit his target with a direct hit, the hero immediately flew away in the opposite direction. He landed on the asphalt and didn't even turn around. He knew that behind his back the alien was being torn to pieces by superpower. Suddenly the man doubled over, blood spraying from his mouth. Hot and sour noodle Superman collapsed to the ground with his head hanging low. The monster had long since died, dismembered in two, and his partner immediately ran up to the eldest. But the winner turned sharply. Thick veins appeared on his face. His eyes burned with a bright light. The fire butterfly was horrified and screamed loudly. She grabbed the older man's shoulder, asking what had happened to him. But the man did not answer. He clenched his teeth. He understood that he had to control it. Seconds later, the hero of hot and sour noodles regained his composure. Smiling from ear to ear, he awkwardly scratched the back of his head, telling Butterfly that it was okay. He was just using too much of his powers. She calmed down, but the man really scared her. Both heroes seemed to be walking along the red carpet, while a happy crowd of gratitude shouted after them and declared their love with might and main. Adam, who had been watching the progress of the battle from his hiding place, was about to leave. When it was all over, he was thinking that he had completely forgotten about the blue pill, and he would still need to prepare the news. At that moment, out of the corner of his eye, he saw some movement right next to the body of the defeated alien. The guy turned and looked carefully in that direction. It turned out that a very tiny clone of the one-eyed killer remained in the womb of the murdered man. Adam belatedly realized that he was moving in his direction with big leaps. His physical and elemental defenses are so high that maybe his mental attack will be his weak point. The clone, jumping closer and closer to the brunette, threatened revenge on the hero of sour and spicy noodles. And when he finds a master, he will absorb his energy. Suddenly his gaze fell on Adam, and he chose him as his master. The guy didn't seem to be worried at all. He was just surprised that the clone sent himself here. The brunette grinned. Well, since the prey is in hand, it means it's worth getting his ability. Sinclair extended his hands, activating his stealing powers. The little monster stopped, sensing the force from outside, and the next moment he fell headfirst, dead. The flow of energy did not escape the attention of the fire butterfly. She immediately realized that someone was using her ability. Adam grabbed the dead one-eyed killer by the body and squeezed it in his palm. It's good that he was just a weak clone, but even his weakness was mental attacks. The mental attack of a D+ rank guy could not kill the monster instantly. The guy began to extract the ability, and soon the blue pearl was already floating into his hand. The ability that had so easily left the alien's body levitated above the palm. Ability of rank B Fireproof Shield. Gives immunity to fire attacks below rank B, significantly increases physical defense, a very useful tank ability. Adam noticed with delight how his entire body was illuminated with a bright glow. Did this really mean that the ability acted on him like an invisible shell covering the surface of the body? He held the orange and blue pearls in his palms, and thought that no matter how strong an ability was, it would always have a weak point. This popular phrase in the world of abilities did not seem to have any effect on him. Meanwhile, the fire butterfly flew low over the houses, looking for a source of energy. Adam heard her scream and quickly hid around the corner. It was not yet time for the heroes to find out about him. The girl disappointedly sat down on the asphalt just not far from the guy. She felt a sharp surge of psychic energy here and definitely saw someone. A man in a mechanical rooster mask came out from the shadows to her. His whole body was covered by a long cloak with a golden brooch. He asked if the heroine was looking for him. Fire Butterfly turned around and in turn asked if he had just used his ability. Sinclair stepped into the light, walking with his metal suit through the puddles. His mask was reflected in the water, shining in the sun. They stood quite far from each other. The girl carefully asked if the stranger was a hero, because she had not seen him before. Throwing the one-eyed killer clone aside like a ball, Adam said that he was just a passerby who helped her clean up. The butterfly stared in surprise at the dead alien at her feet. Could this really be a clone of the one-eyed killer? Looking up at the stranger, the girl thought, how amazing it was that he was able to finish off such a strong and dangerous monster in an instant. But he is not a hero, and should not use his powers without permission. Adam was about to pass by, and politely asked permission, but the heroine put her hand in front of him, urging him to stop. She pressed her chest directly into the guy's cloak and screamed that he was illegally using his ability, which means he would have to follow her to the Hero Association for verification. Singular, to her surprise, tooted impatiently. A low voice, muffled because of the mask, asked Butterfly if she really thought she could stop him. The heroine immediately flew into the air, spreading the flames around. The stranger's actions are contrary to the law of abilities, and by law she has the right to take action against him. Fire Butterflies surrounded Adam. He asked if this is really what heroes should do to ordinary people. Suddenly the guy grabbed the wing of one of the butterflies with his fingers, and the next moment, the stunned heroine watched as the stranger squeezed his palm forcefully. All that was left of the defeated butterfly was smoke. The guy turned his head to the girl. Is it really now his turn to attack? It worked, and within a second the fire butterfly was already high in the sky. As she flew away, she shouted an apology that it was not her fault, and there was no need to kill her. Adam's memory flashed back to the moment when the superhero of hot and sour noodles swallowed the blue pill, as well as the hero's gesture on the glacier were those two doing the same thing. The guy took off his mask and firmly told himself that he would definitely find out the whole truth. The calm of the night in the city of Louisville was disturbed by the sounds of an elevated train. Adam sat on the bench, thinking that for now it was necessary to stop collecting abilities. We need to focus on developing a brain reboot. He closed his eyes, completely lost in thought about searching for information about the blue pill. The guy heard a man's voice very close. Opening his eyes, Adam automatically moved his hand along the seat next to him. Where the backpack lay, it was empty. The guy shuddered and for several seconds could not understand where he had gone. He jumped up, trying to find the thief, because there was a rooster suit in his backpack. The things were definitely stolen by the guy in the jacket passing by. Sinclair examined the entire carriage. The thief could not have disappeared, because they had not yet reached the station. Could he be someone with the power of invisibility? Then what about his scent? Adam activated Brain Reboot, enhanced senses, and immediately realized that the smell of the backpack was coming from a nearby guy. But the aura and clothes of the calmly standing stranger were completely different. This means that this is not invisibility. There may be some other ability to change appearance. However, the guy was not at all upset, because this ability came into his hands on its own, and would be very useful. Sinclair tirelessly followed the guy with bright hair through the night streets, keeping a safe distance. He whistled something under his breath. Today is harvest day. Suddenly he raised his eyes to the sky and thought that he felt strangely nervous. The thief turned around sharply and saw the very passenger from whom he stole the backpack. How could he expose him, and even begin to persecute him? Without thinking twice, the stranger took off and ran as fast as he could forward. Today he was clearly unlucky. The nearest hiding place was a public toilet. The brunette slammed the door open, loudly asking if the thief was going to use middle-class tricks by hiding in the closet when he was too weak. There were no stalls in the men's restroom, and there was no stranger there either. The guy looked in surprise at the pink sign. Had the kidnapper really entered the women's restroom? Adam knocked on the door of the cubicle, from where a rustling sound was heard, and called for him to leave. A squeal was heard from there. He was called a pervert. Adam opened the door with his foot. It means he likes to do everything the wrong way. From the depths of the booth, at first glance, a female silhouette appeared. Toilet paper and a whole set of cosmetics instantly flew at the guy. All this was accompanied by cries for help. The brunette, in bewilderment, peeled off layers of paper. He admired the ability the thief had. He was even able to change his voice. Sitting hunched over on the toilet lid, the same guy was looking at him, but already in women's clothes, very open, a top, a short skirt and stockings with heels. The guy asked for forgiveness, This was his first experience of transformation. Adam said with disappointment that the ability cannot change the body and appearance. The thief almost cried. How unlucky he was. With a guilty look, he handed the backpack to the owner. He even tried to smile to smooth out the conflict. The first thing Sinclair did was open the backpack and make sure that the things were still there. Hanging over the stranger, he sternly asked if he had looked inside. But the guy, stuttering, replied that he had not even opened it. Adjusting his glasses on the bridge of his nose, the brunette advised him to find a normal job in the future and be a good person. Sitting on the toilet and clasping his hands in a prayer gesture, the thief assured that he would never steal again and thanked him for being spared this time. The answer to him was Adam's low, threatening voice and disappointment. No one was going to spare him. The booth lit up with a bright blue light, blinding the thief. Leaving the toilet and throwing the red pearl in his palms, the brunette remembered that he promised himself not to collect abilities anymore, but now he could not resist such a temptation. F-rank ability is change clothes anywhere. You can change clothes with one movement of your hand. It also comes with storage space. Sinclair did not hesitate and immediately used the acquisition on himself. He left the building in a new, expensive suit, changed his hairstyle and took off his glasses. Looking around himself, he smiled. What a convenient and useful ability. There were 2 policemen standing at the exit. They received a message from a citizen that someone was screaming in the women's toilets. Adam pointed his finger towards the restroom and replied that he heard screams, and even saw a pervert in disguise there. Looking after the half-naked thief, who was being led away by the police, the guy thought that some people with abilities did not deserve them. He must definitely correct this. A week passed. Echoes of music from the club sounded in the silence of the night. Adam drove up there in a taxi. He got out of the car and slammed the door. He was called to the meeting by George, who was standing nearby. Greeting his friend, the brunette asked what he wanted, since he even had to call him here. Cheerful as always, Ripley put one arm around his shoulder and mysteriously asked him to guess who he had just seen in the nightclub. Adam muttered something, and his friend replied with a sly smile that his girlfriend Lily worked there as a maintenance worker. The brunette narrowed his eyes and asked not to call the neighbor his girlfriend anymore. Approaching the door, George's enthusiasm did not subside. He, in turn, asked to stop pretending, and that his friend would understand everything when he saw the performance with his own eyes. Loud music and darkness, diluted by bright flashes, blinded Sinclair. When both entered the club, Ripley called him to the nearest table. In a large human-sized cage, in a revealing bunny costume, she danced Lily Romero. Each dance movement was accompanied by an unambiguous rubbing of the rabbit's tail on the pole. The girl was the first to notice those entering and was stunned. She slowed down for a moment, panicking. What is her neighbor doing here? Adam sat with his hands on his knees. George carefully sipped a cocktail and consoled his friend. Don't be sad, there are still many beauties on Earth. And today he is on his, George's, territory, so let him sit and relax. There were sofas surrounding each table, forming a square for more people, so the guy raised his hand and loudly called someone over. 3 buxom workers looked at them, waving their hands enticingly. George introduced them to Adam in turn. Then he pointed to Sinclair himself and introduced him to the girls. They immediately surrounded the handsome guy, showering him with compliments, while George remained somewhere on the sidelines. Meanwhile, at the table next to them, someone loudly slammed a bottle of alcohol on the table. The young guy sat in a waddle, hugging the most beautiful workers. He complained that his brother took him McLaren, and that's why he lost to that brat Fred. On his right side was a couple, a local girl and a red-haired man named Michael Burse, the young guy's bodyguard. He replied that he simply lost the race, and there was no need to blame the car for that. His interlocutor was obviously very drunk, and was now laughing with all his might. Throwing his hands on the girl's shoulders, Zachary Wade said that the man became his bodyguard only because he could not get through to his father's side. At this time, Lily came up to quietly pour more alcohol into the glass. Narrowing his eyes, Zachary looked slyly at the man, asking if it was because he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He smiled widely and replied that, being a C-rank hero, why would his master be bothered by such things? The mocking expression instantly disappeared from the guy's face, and he sked in displeasure. Zachary jumped up and, from a sudden surge of rage, slapped Lily in the face, cursing why there was such staff here at all. The girl could not stay on her feet and fell, hitting the sofa. Someone else's palm was imprinted on her cheek. Wade hysterically asked why he was served such disgusting alcohol. The reddened young face grimaced. How dare they force him to drink such swill? The next moment, the guy, hanging over the dancer, poured the contents of the bottle on her head. Adam, seeing this, tried to jump up, but George began to hold him back. Because his friend did not have the strength to compete with these people, the young master was the second son of a mechanical hero from the Berkshire Company, and his bodyguard was a C-rank hero Flaming Fist. Sinclair angrily threw away his friend's hand and muttered that he was aware of everything and was now just going to the restroom. Unhappy Lily was quietly sobbing, unable to get up. Sticky alcohol was running down her hair, and her face was still burning from a recent blow. Zachary sat down again, holding the girls close to him. His gaze fell on the table, where there were several new bottles, and they know how to apologize. He added to the manager that the guilty girl must be finished off to the end, and the bar manager, knowing who this boy was, unquestioningly fulfilled any requests, loudly encouraging the man. Those present watched as he forcibly poured strong alcohol into Lily. Punishment overtook the scoundrel instantly. The hero in the rooster mask kicked him away from the girl. Romero was on all fours, coughing up bitter liquid and gasping for air. Adam approached the young master and his henchman, saying that he knew about the presence of the mechanical hero's son here. Zachary continued to carelessly pour alcohol into himself, mockingly muttering that the stranger was definitely on his turn to die today. His bodyguards covered him. The red-haired Flaming Fist came forward, interested in the guy. The rooster sat down on the sofa, crossed his legs, then crossed his arms over his chest. He offered a deal to brother Zachary. He, having heard the stranger's words, became interested, blinking drowsily. The bodyguard worriedly told the young master that it was already quite late, and he needed to leave. For this, the man received a glass bottle on the head. Zachary, without hesitation, threw mud at him, shouting that he would not go anywhere, because he was offered a deal. He swallowed the humiliating insult, gritting his teeth. Responding to the petty scoundrel means losing your job. Wade stood up and walked unsteadily towards Sinclair, asking what the deal was. The Flaming Fist nevertheless touched the gentleman on the shoulder, inviting him to sit down and rest. Throwing a threatening glance towards Adam, he assured that he would talk to this actor himself. While stirring the whiskey in the glass in a circular motion, the guy chuckled through the mask. Do they really want to attack him when he himself is against violence? However, for the fact that the bodyguard prevented him from talking about important matters with his master, punishment follows. And the rooster was ready to teach the fist a lesson. He slowly rose from his seat. The man, showing off, urged him to come closer. The bodyguard tightened the bandages on his hands, saying that it was still unknown who would teach whom a lesson. At that time, bright flashes of flame were gathering around him. A moment later, the fire smoothly flowed into his fists, and the hero pathetically said that the stranger was very unlucky, otherwise he would not have provoked him. Adam immediately realized that the bodyguard's ability was C-rank fire element attacks. The patrons of the bar, mingling with the staff, watched the unfolding scene from afar. The majority supported the rooster, saying that he was very brave for daring to challenge the student of an A-rank hero. Lily was taken under her wing by a colleague, offering help. She, still trembling, thanked. While the crowd was arguing about what the men were fighting about and whether the rooster could defeat the flame boxer, the latter wasted no time in running at his opponent, waving his flaming fists. But seeing that he didn't even move, apprehension flashed through the man's head. Why doesn't the guy try to evade? Is this really a trap? Adam skillfully shrugged off the attack as the fire passed right next to his face and mockingly asked if there would be anything else. The bodyguard bared his teeth. Since the day he became a hero, not a single enemy or beast could withstand his attack. The next second, he raised his fist, and the flames spread much further than last time, completely covering the rooster. The crowd recoiled in horror. The hero would definitely burn someone. Sinclair, meanwhile, was completely drowned in fire. Only his outline was visible. But the next moment a gloved hand appeared from the flames. Following her, the owner himself came out. The fire, like a pet, obediently spread to the sides. Flame Fist covered his face with his hand as his own power nearly burned him. He stared at his enemy in bewilderment. He was safe and sound. Adam reached out and activated his mental attack ability. The bodyguard's eyes turned white. His mouth opened in a silent scream, and he himself turned white. Taking advantage of the fact that the hero was in a trance, the The rooster swung his hand and hit him just below the back of the head with the edge of his palm. The boxer immediately fell to the floor, passed out. Instantly sobered up, Zachary jumped up from his seat. What a strong man! The fiery boxer was struck down with just one blow. Sinclair sat down on one knee, extracting an ability from his fallen opponent. Ability C rank, Flame Strike, can create flames on the hands, perfect for a cook. The rooster stood up and slowly walked towards Wade. He, frightened, crawled onto the sofa with his feet, shaking his head in search of protection. Smiling ingratiatingly, he decided to talk to the stranger, asked what kind of deal he wanted to talk about, and that he would pay him right now if he needed money. Adam silently grabbed him by the neck and lifted him off the ground. Zachary, squirming with all his might, began to threaten his father. When the rooster said that he knew who his father was, the boy, trying to take someone else's hand from his throat, threatened that if he was killed, there would be no mercy from his father. The guy abruptly lowered the young gentleman to the ground and approached his ear, whispering that he was not going to kill, but wanted to share something. Looking into Zachary's eyes, the mask insinuatingly asked if he wanted to have the ability. Zachary froze, not believing his ears. Really? The rooster let go of his hand, and it became easier to breathe. Unable to stay on his feet, the guy fell and began to rub his bruised neck. That bastard thinks that he is a god and can just give him this ability. Adam threw a piece of paper on the ground, and leaving said that if the young master wants to receive the ability, let him come alone to this address in 7 days. Sinclair, having changed his clothes with the help of his ability, went outside. He immediately received a call from George, who was in the club, and shouted into the phone where he had gone. The guy replied that the bar was too noisy and he had to go outside to catch his breath. Ripley's delighted cry was heard from the receiver. Adam missed the incredible show. His friend promised to show everything that happened, and also invited the brunette to eat kebab. Sinclair's gaze settled on one of the city's high-rises, casting a bright light on the empty streets. The guy thought that the first part of the plan had been completed. Now all that remained was to wait for Zachary to fall for the hook. It was also worth starting to check the heroes from the inside in the Berkshire Company, so he will be able to find out the truth faster. Meanwhile, in the Berkshire heroes' office, there was an argument between part of the team. 3 heroes, led by a leader, sat at a large table in the shape of the letter P. All 4 of them stared intently at the large screen in front of them. In it, a man in a rooster mask skillfully dealt with the C-rank hero, Flaming Fist. The mechanical hero sitting at the head, a gray-haired man in a red and gold suit, possessing a typical heterochromia, with his hands folded in front of him, asked the others to voice their thoughts about what happened. Hero Glacier Adventurer, a young guy with blue hair and a suit of the same color, spoke first, saying that the masked man used his hand like a knife to deal with Flame Boxer in 1 second. Most likely he is higher than B rank. The hero Lazy Swordsman, a man with a high ponytail and a long scar running through his left eye, objected to the adventurer. What killed Michael Burse was not a hand. Michael lost the moment the masked man made a movement with his hand. The third hero, of unusual appearance, Ethan Barton, with black eyes, his head crowned with blue horns, offered to look at the assessment of the Flaming Boxer's injuries from the identification department. He was the first to see what was written. His pitch-black eyes widened in disbelief. The rest of the heroes were stunned at once. Looking at the papers, Flame Boxer's ability was gone. Looks like they are facing a huge problem. The mechanical hero exhaled heavily, staring intently at the screen. The lazy swordsman asked a question to which no one knew the answer for sure. Where did this guy come from who can erase other people's abilities? Ethan replied that in his experience, only a C-rank hero had such an ability. The mechanical hero looked around the company and asked Barton if he was confident in his judgment. The Glacier Adventurer even jumped up from his seat and exclaimed that this was impossible. The old transporter, who already had 1 foot in the grave, could not appear right now. Ethan had to admit that the Berkshire Company could not deal with this issue on their own. They would have to inform the Hero Association about it. The lazy swordsman objected. A person with special abilities like him, no matter what company he finds himself in, will be used as a killing machine, so no one will report him. The mechanical hero tiredly massaged his temple and suggested not to be the first to report this. Let it be a secret of their company. Then asked everyone to disperse to think. The next morning, in a huge mansion, the estate of Zachary Wade, the young master lay in bed, clutching the leaf thrown by the masked man, wondering if he could gain at least one ability. Having read the address again, he muttered in despair that the guy had offered a deal, which meant he needed something. Zachary squeezed the piece of paper forcefully and grinned. In any case, a couple more days and he will have the ability, the rest doesn't matter. Adam called George to the Louisville Museum, and to his friend's surprised question what they were doing here, Sinclair replied that he wanted to learn more about monsters so that it would be easier for him to escape when they met, and he himself wondered whether it was possible to extract the ability of a C-rank monster. Ripley nudged his friend with his elbow, pointing at the girls passing by. His friend probably came here not to learn about monsters, but to meet girls. Everyone knows that only beauties come here. But Adam ignored his friend's attack and pointed his finger to the side. He came here for this. The electric Tyrannosaurus, a C-rank monster, 7 meters tall, 12 meters long, appeared at an early stage, spewing electricity and causing many disasters, causing the entire city to be paralyzed. Because of him, 6 A-rank heroes, 13 B-rank heroes and 27 C-rank heroes died. Staring at the monster of incredible size, Adam said that he plans to write an article about the monster invasion. The mechanical mouth of the Tyrannosaurus remained open, in the same form as at the moment, when people finally managed to defeat it at the cost of incredible efforts and many victims. George opened his mouth in shock. This monster is so powerful. Sinclair came closer and, as if under hypnosis, extended his hand. If he can extract this terrible ability, then... A local security guard immediately ran up to him, waving a bat threateningly. The guy handed over his work badge, saying that he was a journalist and wanted to write an article about monsters. The guard examined the card and warned that in the museum you can look with your eyes, but not touch with your hands. At this moment, George winked at his friend. The frisky guy decided to talk to the man, leading him further into the hall. Asking where he could find pretty girls here, the guard immediately inquired about his sanity. Finally, Adam was able to return to his plan, and again reached out with his hand towards the monster, activating the extraction of abilities. Familiar impulses passed through the body, but the brunette noticed with surprise that the ability was difficult to extract. Finally, he succeeded, and a soft purple pearl was already levitating in his palm. But something out of the ordinary happened. He has learned the E-rank ability electricity, can create an electric ball, can also be used to charge the phone. Staring at the pearl in his hands, Sinclair asked himself in bewilderment, he only extracted an E-rank ability from an S-rank monster. Has such a powerful monster really lost its ability due to its long-ago demise? Perhaps the last time Adam was able to extract a higher-level ability from a monster because it was still alive. The guy, passing by the exhibits, thought with disappointment that it seemed that he would not get anything like that from the museum, but still, he needed to continue the search. When he returned to his room, the sun had already set and the sky turned pastel colors. The brunette laid out the loot on the table after going around the entire museum. Adam received only 3 low-rank abilities. 3 pearls, 2 red, 1 purple, flickered and sparkled, each emitting its own ability. The first is the F-rank ability clone, which can be used to create a clone that exists for a minute, and can also be used to turn on the light. The second is the E-rank ability electricity, can create an electric ball, can also be used to charge the phone. The third F-rank ability human control, can make any person show interest in you, but you are not going to use the ability to commit unethical acts, right? The guy, resting his chin on his hand, thought upset that the power of these abilities was so weak that it scared him away. But if abilities can be combined, can they also be destroyed? Adam raised the golden pearl, a C-rank fire ability, to eye level, thinking about how it could be used in his intended task. He exclaimed out loud, "Destroy." The pearl caught fire in his hand, trembling slightly, but nothing happened. The brunette decided not to give up and try again. This time something happened. The pearl began to crack. The ability was destroyed. Now on the table in front of Sinclair lay several dark, barely shining cubes of different sizes. Level 1, Dark Magic, Base Substance, Perfect and Unbreakable Square. The brunette brought one of them closer to his eyes. Could it be that abilities are created from these cubes, and he can actually destroy the ability? He began to think, the ability could be broken down into its most basic components, cubes of dark energy. In one hand he held a cube, in the other a red pearl. Then, accordingly, and for sure, he will be able to use these cubes of dark energy to enhance his abilities. Guided by his own thoughts, Sinclair connected the 2 items. The ability actually improved. The E rank ability is human control, provides the ability to mentally get closer to the target, the ability to deceive people. Now you can start engaging in scams. The brunette did not believe his own happiness. If the ability really improved, he can create an S rank ability himself. His thoughts were interrupted by screams coming from the corridor. His neighbor Lily Romero was screaming, asking someone to leave and not touch her. At first, Adam thought that Zachary Wade had come to the girl to plant the night before. But oddly enough, her parents turned out to be unexpected guests. Her mother stood aside. Her father swore with all his might, sitting on the sofa and smoking a pipe, while his daughter sobbed inconsolably next to her. He took a drag and blew out thick smoke, saying that he was not deliberately trying to deceive his daughter. Sinclair left just at that moment, quietly closing the door behind him. The man shouted again. If they had not done this, the girl would not have sent the money. The mother spoke up. Lily's brother needs money to buy a house and a car, and also to get a wife. All this costs $1 million. Where can parents get it from? The girl immediately stopped sobbing and clenched her fist, wondering if her parents had deceived her by saying that her father was sick and she urgently needed to send money. A new stream of tears flowed from her eyes. The girl asked if they knew how desperate she was when she learned about her father's illness. Covering her face with her hand, Lily whispered bitterly that she worked 4 shifts from morning to night, just to earn money as quickly as possible. The father exhaled smoke and said indifferently that the family's first thought was for the daughter to send as much as she could, and he would have a way to find the rest later, because the Lily family's bloodline could not end with them. The girl defiantly asked if this was just a way to bring her home and sell her to a man she didn't even know. The mother took her inconsolable daughter by the hand, saying that even if this man does not receive a higher education, he is still honest and kind. He will not treat her badly. Lily pulled her hand away with force, screaming. Did her parents even think for a second about where the $50,000 she sent a week ago came from? Swallowing angry tears, she admitted that she worked as a bartender and servant, and became an escort for this. The shocked parents looked at their daughter silently, as if they were struck by lightning. The father jumped up from the sofa, pointing his finger at Lily. What a shame, she ruined the family's reputation. He swung at his daughter, throwing mud at her and threatening to beat her. But she turned her head away, defiantly answering that the clients beat her harder than her own father ever did. At that second, Adam jumped up and managed to grab the man's palm, saying that he could discuss everything with his own daughter. The man turned around in disbelief. How dare someone interrupt him? He spat at his feet, telling the unfamiliar guy that he had no right to interfere while he was punishing his daughter. Sinclair astutely noted that the man did not seem to regret what had happened at all. Remorse could only be seen in the mother's eyes. The guy decided to take extreme measures, to help her and see if she could help Lily, and therefore activated the C-rank ability Human Control the woman. As if someone had possessed her, swung her hand and slapped her husband in the face. He could not stand on his feet and fell to the ground. Now his wife scolded him, saying that his daughter had become an escort. Did he really have a heart of stone? She rushed to Lily with hugs. Both were crying. The woman asked for forgiveness for offending her daughter, because she was her dearest child. The man, without getting up from his knees, sighed. Then her brother will earn everything himself. Adam remembered his unfortunate sister, whose life was supported by medical devices. Everything is fine, as long as people understand it in time, who in this world would not feel sorry for their own family. The next morning, the guy went with Lily to accompany her parents to the train station. The girl waved at them through the window, urging them to be careful, and promised to come for the new year. Her mother waved back, urging her not to do anything stupid again. The brunette was holding a glass of drink in his hands. His neighbor thanked him for the company and said that he could already return. Sinclair handed the girl a glass, expressing the hope that her brother would realize everything, and it would be much more useful than any amount of money his sister would send. Lily winked playfully, asking the guy to come closer so she could tell him something. He blushed, but complied with the request. The next second, Romero planted a grateful kiss on the man's lips. Pulling away, the girl thanked her neighbor again in a whisper. Night fell on the city. Adam, dressed in a rooster costume, stopped at a tall building, a center for processing monster corpses, where there was heavy security. It was there that a huge number of monster corpses were stored. This should have made it easier for the guy to gain access to new abilities. A large truck drove past, turning toward the building, and a thought arose in Sinclair's head. It seemed that there was only a special way to get inside. Without waiting for the truck to stop, he slid his boots across the floor, arching backwards. At the bottom of the car, along the entire perimeter, there were structures attached, similar to bars, and Adam firmly clung to one of them with both hands. A heavy sigh was heard from under the mask, but the brunette realized that he was not alone in such an unusual place. There was a girl's face right in front of his face, and the stranger motioned for him to be silent. The brunette obediently did not utter a word, surprised by the company. Was this man also trying to get into the center? At the very beginning, because of the darkness, he still doubted who was in front of him, but the feeling of close contact with a woman's breast dispelled all doubts. The guy said hello, stuttering, and remarked that they were lucky. The stranger grimaced and hissed at him. What a damn coincidence. She was so unlucky that he was here. Now she would have to act according to the rules of the field and rely on her abilities. The girl's name was Regina Craig. She was a representative of the Latesville Chamber of Commerce. She introduced herself and asked Adam who he was. Regina looked into the dark glasses of the mask, saying that they would soon reach the unloading area. But for now she could not get off the truck in this position. Suddenly, Sinclair grabbed her tightly by the waist, urging her to hold on to him, and pushed to the side, flying out from under the truck. They found themselves lying on the asphalt. The guy took the entire blow on himself, without ceasing to squeeze his new acquaintance in his hands. Realizing that she was not going to move, he carefully asked how long she would continue to hug him like this. Regina was blown away from the guy by the wind. Stepping to the side, she replied that if the situation did not require it, who would even want to hug him? Finally, they reached the monster corpse processing room. Adam walked carefully behind the girl. She noticed this and asked why the guy was acting as if he had never seen anything like this. Maybe he was completely new to this business. Sinclair bowed his head, acknowledging the girl's seniority, which made her happy, so Craig couldn't help but let him follow her. They entered a large room, in which a defeated monster lay on a large metal bench, a werewolf, with a powerful body covered with fur. Regina said that her boss wanted the white hair on the werewolf's chest and would have to carefully cut it off, which she did. Then she took out an unusually shaped bag from somewhere. The girl boastfully told Adam that this was her ability storage bag, in which you can store a lot of things. The guy thought that this was a shameful name for a cosmic ability. Regina turned and called Sinclair to follow her into the next processing room, but the brunette was already busy extracting the ability from the werewolf. He managed to obtain the ability D-rank metal transformation, which can change the appearance of any metal, the dream of any car service owner. Immediately, ear-deafening sounds were heard. Adam jumped on the spot. The girl also jumped. Had the alarm really gone off and they had been discovered? An employee in a white suit appeared at the door, swearing. He cried out, sobbing, that the monster was not dead. The couple stood frozen as they watched the action unfold before them. Huge tentacles squeezed through the door, wrapped themselves around the man, and dragged him along. He could only utter a cry for help. It seemed that the danger for Regina and Adam had passed. The guy did not move from his place, and the girl leaned on his shoulder, asking him to hold her, otherwise her legs would weaken from what she saw. But the happiness did not last long. The girl felt someone's sticky touch on her shoulder. Before she had time to let out a scream, one of the tentacles was already dragging her somewhere. The guy extended his hand, trying to reach the unfortunate woman. He immediately summoned his force fire ability. The fast tentacle dragged the girl away. Adam couldn't keep up with her, and the fireball he created, it seemed, couldn't either. Jumping over another obstacle, the guy noticed something. There are all metal posts here. Exactly. A blue pearl, the D-rank ability metal transformation, has already begun to levitate in the palm of my hand. Several metal objects transformed into tentacles and reached towards Regina. With sharp ends, they cut off the end of the tentacle that was holding the girl from the monster. She fell to the floor, hitting her whole body painfully. Sinclair ran to her, asking as he went if everything was okay. The girl sat on her knees and complained that there were hooks on the tentacles that scratched her because of this. Her t-shirt was torn, almost exposing one breast. A roar was heard. The couple turned around and saw that the monster had come to life again. An incredibly sized skull with fangs, in which many tentacles swarmed. Dozens of them held down the center's employees, who squirmed and screamed in pain and fear. Regina stared in his direction in disbelief, her mouth open. The skull turned slightly and noticed them. He immediately released several tentacles towards the guy and girl. Adam summoned metal transformation again. The skull soared up to the high ceiling, pointing its tentacles at people. The guy began to attack the alien with a huge metal shield, connecting several stands together. Raising her head, Regina watched in horror as the shield thinned under the monster's set, and screamed at her partner to come up with another way. In a panic, she covered her head with her hands, squealing hysterically that she would die and be eaten. Adam was thinking hard about what to do, because this couldn't go on for long, and he remembered that he had seen several cans of gasoline. He tried to console Regina, telling her not to be afraid, because he had an idea. The guy pushed the shield in front of him and summoned metal tentacles using his ability. The canisters of gasoline seen earlier followed them. All this soared upward, straight to the alien's skull. Adam ordered the small pearl that accompanied the tentacle canisters to explode. There was a deafening explosion. Thanks to gasoline, the fire poured out in different directions. The brunette grabbed the girl by the hand and pulled her along, calling on the others to run. They seemed to have pulled away from the raging flames, but suddenly an unknown man blocked their way, holding some kind of weapon behind his back. Looking sternly at the couple, he asked if they were the thieves who revived the monster to attack the center. Adam stood silently, but Regina put her hands on her hips and began to attack the man, asking who he was and why he was talking nonsense as soon as he appeared. He angrily called the girl a disrespectful child, and that in the prime of his life she still drank milk. Regina was not convinced. She became even more angry, hissing that he was acting disrespectfully, being an elderly man. But then Adam recognized the old man, and loudly exclaimed his name: Thomas Conley, the hero who defeated King Kong Berserk 10 years ago. The man chuckled. The guy was more respectful, and continued that he would deal with him when he finished with the monster. The guy was surprised what an A-rank hero was doing in the corpse processing center. Thomas reached for his weapon and used the North Star attack, Style 1, Greedy Wolf Attack. A ghostly blue wolf rushed forward, cutting the tentacles lengthwise and crosswise. The pair looked on in admiration at what the hero was doing, Adam noticing that, as expected from the legendary inherited power called Polar Star Attack, each one of them is an advanced technique. Even those with S-rank abilities would have to take a few steps back. There was a roar from the skull monster. Conley jumped up to get closer to the alien's head. Torn pieces of tentacles scattered across the hall. The hero summoned the ability attack of the North Star, Style 2, Hunger of the Heavens. Pushing to the side, he saw how the skull had lost its tentacles, moving in anger only the severed appendages. Finally, the man released Water of Heaven, sending his katana and streams of water towards the alien. The space shook, and a few seconds later Sinclair was already watching the monster being torn to pieces. Thomas dropped to one knee. Behind him bloody scraps scattered across the hall, all that was left of the alien. The hero pointed the katana at Adam, saying that now it was time to deal with the guy. He immediately noticed intense eyes filled with determination and murderous intent. Sinclair tried to convince the older hero that they were not the ones who brought this beast to life. The man, without changing his position, replied that this was nonsense, because the couple looked too suspicious. Regina whispered to Adam with concern if he had confidence that he would defeat this old man. The guy replied that he couldn't, but did she want to? The girl shook her head and said that she wanted to lend him a weapon. She shoved armor made from the materials of a rank B monster into the guy's hands and ran away, shouting as she went that the armor would help, and she would root for him. Adam, having examined the object, chuckled. What madness! Regina reminded him of Trisha. Thomas suddenly, without warning, attacked the guy, raising his katana over him. Fortunately, Sinclair managed to react at the last moment. He put his hand forward and the armor given by Regina deflected the attack, surprising the older hero. The brunette himself was amazed at such a powerful defense. Thomas did not give up, and regularly wielded his weapon, increasingly advancing on the guy. He exhaled heavily and activated the brain reboot ability. The ability made it possible to slow down the hero's movements in the eyes of Adam. The mask stared at Conley. The guy thought that after activating brain reboot, the attack seemed slower, but it was still not enough to defeat him. Screaming furiously, the old hero began to rush towards the guy with redoubled strength. He, even in slow motion, realized that he did not have time to dodge. I had to use extreme measures, the human control ability. The old man realized that everything was not going according to plan when he could not control his movements in the air. He hissed in disbelief, asking the guy if he stopped his movements. Both opponents grouped and sank to the ground. Adam calmly said that he would have been in danger if he had not done this. Thomas, who would not have suffered defeat, once again ran away with his sword at the ready. Are these tricks really all that petty thieves are capable of? Adam used metal transformation again, and a whole staff grew from the small object in his hand. The two heroes clashed weapons overnight. Sinclair's eyes, safely hidden under his mask, studied the old man. Each of his attacks is strong. Human control can be used to stop him for a short time, and so that Adam is not cut into two parts. The employees of the center who watched the fight vied with each other to put forward theories about the origin of the man in the rooster mask. If he can fight with Thomas Conley, could he be the A-rank hero of the 6th zone god of weapons? The brunette heard and wondered who the god of weapons even was. Finally, Thomas stopped and took the weapon away, deep in thought. Judging by the guy's attacks, he was most likely not a thief. The man hid his katana behind his back and ordered everyone present to leave the corpse processing area because he wanted to talk to the rooster. The workers blinked in surprise and asked if they all needed to leave. The hero flashed his eyes dangerously. Someone is not going to listen to the order of the manager of this center. Regina, along with the others, ran towards the exit, shouting to Adam that she would be waiting for him outside. The men were left alone. The guy asked what the older hero wanted from him. He replied that he knew that the brunette was not the god of weapons, because the skills were incomparable with the skills of God. Only the metal ability slightly resembled him. But someone like Adam has several abilities, which means he can be considered a strong person who would never come to the center just to steal some fur. Thomas narrowed his eyes and seriously asked the brunette, did he come here in search of a world secret? Sinclair, without expressing surprise, thought, what is the world secret? What is he even talking about? We need to learn more from him. Therefore, the guy decided to cheat and said that he came here in search of a world secret. The man suddenly burst out laughing, exclaiming that it would be very good to tell such a young and ambitious, strong person like a guy. Pointing his hand to the side, the hero admitted that the real purpose of creating this center was to open a one-way tunnel to the world of monsters. This tunnel was called the White Hole. It's good that the rooster's mask skillfully hid Adam's emotions. He was shocked by what he heard. 15 years ago, the White Hole of the city of Louisville was successfully discovered. The Hero Association sent a small team of high-ranking heroes with a special mission to infiltrate the world of monsters, and Thomas himself was on that team. During this mission, many S-rank heroes died. Only he and 2 others were able to return because they risked their lives. The man said that, in fact, each monster corpse processing center is built on the weakest points of the earth. As long as they continued to burn the monsters' bodies at these weak points, they would be able to open a white hole leading to the monster world. Adam nodded at the corpse of the tentacled monster and asked what about it, why the alien came to life. Conley said that this is something that they do not tell the outside world. In fact, it is a mutation of the monster that rubbed against the white hole. People on this planet are like animals trapped by beasts. Only when they all gather the strongest qualities of humanity will they have a chance to win. The elderly hero turned around and said goodbye to Adam that he could go. Regardless of what organization he belonged to, he must remember that he was part of humanity. It turns out that the men's conversation was heard by the powers that be. A beautiful red-haired woman stood next to the chair in which the elderly man was sitting. She said displeasedly that this old man Thomas calmly continues to do stupid things. How could he even tell such things to the outside world? The man calmly replied that even if he had not told about it, sooner or later other organizations would have found out about it, and it was impossible to keep a world secret only between narrow circles. The woman asked if the headquarters video conference was here. It involves more than 25 people who have already fulfilled the necessary conditions for consideration of a Category S case. The couple turned from the window to the screens, carefully peering at the people on them. Here's what the Louisville Metro Heroes Association has to say. And, looking at each other, they began the conference. The main question on the agenda: is it necessary to tell the truth to associations of owners of heroes who exceed A rank? Adam came to the hospital again to visit his sister, who was lying in a coma. He often did this. He sat next to him and talked, not knowing whether she could hear him or not. Addressing her by name, he said that today he was told one harsh truth. Earlier, Sinclair, after talking with the hero, left the corpse processing area, into another room, where he was met by a buzzing crowd, people asking each other what was happening inside. Did this guy really defeat Thomas? Why was he the only one who came out? The guy first approached Regina. The girl asked if everything was okay. He understood that he could not let other people know about his abilities. The guy replied that he was fine and asked her to come closer and look into his eyes. The girl complied with the request in bewilderment. As expected, Adam used his human control ability on her. Regina's consciousness became foggy, and her vision went double. The man in the rooster mask ordered her to forget that he was using fire and metal powers. He also gave her the armor and made her believe that it was he who brought the girl protection and owed her 10,000. Adam then snapped his fingers. Regina woke up as if waking up from a dream. She quickly said that she was glad that the boss was all right, that she already had a curfew at home, so she would go first, and rushed away. Remembering these events, sitting in the hospital room, Adam smiled, looking at his sister. This Craig is so similar to her. She is sweet and loves money. Stroking Trisha's cold cheek, he said that after revenge he would find a way to wake her up. Full of determination, the guy returned home after dark. He sat down at the table, ready to experiment with his abilities, holding a piece of metal in his hand. The metal transformation ability was activated. A star absorption ring appeared on Adam's finger. He then shook the ability medicine in his hand. The brunette can't let people know his true ability, and must use these two things to trick Zachary Wade. New snake appearance. The appearance has changed with a white mask with blue stripes on it. Adam tried on the mask. The new set of clothes will be called Snake. His abilities will be different from the abilities of his second self, Casper Bart, and the guy will also be able to use fire attacks when necessary. Thanks to the fact that Casper became a part of this, an organization consisting of his many guises will appear. It will be called the Judges. Adam's main goal is to judge those heroes who have fallen, and the expenses of the organization will be decided by the young master Zachary Wade. Late at night, Sinclair arrived at the agreed meeting place with the guy. He was fast asleep right on the floor. The brunette kicked him, forcing him to wake up. At first, he did not understand who was standing above him and began to threaten, but a second later he recognized the man in the mask and began to apologize. Adam thanked the young master for the visit, and noted his confidence in him. Zachary clung to the masked man's legs, screaming that boss Casper Bart could have whatever he wanted if he gave him the ability. He listed all the benefits that he could bestow on this person. Sinclair kicked the annoying minion away, answering that he was not interested. Hanging menacingly over the guy, Adam insinuatingly said that it's easy to get the ability, you just have to look into his eyes. Then he used the human control ability. Zachary's consciousness immediately split into two, plunging into an unconscious state. To begin with, Adam asked to tell him about the blue pill. There was no answer. The guy just sat in front of him, staggering slightly, and did not react at all. Sinclair cursed to himself. What's going on? Did it really not work out? He then asked Zachary to slap himself. When this request was not fulfilled, Adam began to wonder if it might be that the guy already had an ability higher than C rank, which made human control ineffective on him. The brunette used a mental attack. Wade fell to the ground with his eyes closed. Sinclair remembered that last time he didn't attack him in the bar, but it doesn't seem like he has any ability. Anyway, why not give it a try? Taking advantage of the extraction of the ability, the brunette was incredibly surprised. Zachary actually already has the ability. A bright green pearl burst out of the guy's body and flew up to his palm. A rank A ability is rebirth. Only once, after death, you can be reborn and go back a day. The ability can only be used after death, and it's very stupid. As the pearl hung in the air, casting an emerald light, Adam still couldn't believe that the young master had an A rank ability. He directed the ability towards himself, deciding that he would be kind to Zachary in this case, because this ability would allow him to turn the tide of events. And now he will invest in the Gaia Pearl that he received at the corpse processing center. Adam woke up Wade, who sat up abruptly, screaming to be given the ability, and in general, when he managed to fall asleep. The brunette replied that this happened because of fatigue, then took out a metal ring, asking to look at it. Then he explained, surprising the guy, that this stellar absorption ring made by the organization can be used to steal ability factors from others. Adam then handed him the ability medicine, telling him that the organization uses special techniques and turns these ability factors into a medicine that can give ordinary people abilities. Zachary almost dropped the bottle from his hands. It's so special. Is he really being deceived? Adam replied that he could drink and find out whether it was true or not. The gears in the guy's head were spinning at double speed. At first he thought it was poison, But if Casper wanted to kill him, he wouldn't delay it until today. He doesn't care. He'll do it. Zachary made up his mind and drank the liquid in one gulp. The empty bottle fell out of my hand and broke with a clang. His eyes became bloodshot, and he growled loudly. The guy fell to his knees in front of Adam, clutching his head. The masked man laughed. Soon he will learn the power of his abilities. Wade instantly transformed, screaming that his whole body was on fire. He became a real werewolf. This actually has nothing to do with the cure. It was Sinclair who controlled the pearl from a distance. The transformation did not stop there. Instead of human ears, animal ones appeared. Long and sharp claws grew on its paws. Now a huge and muscular wolf with burning eyes towered in front of Adam. The brunette asked what the werewolf thought about the ability to transform. He looked at the animal's palms in surprise, asking if this was an ability, and whether he became stronger or weaker than his brother, who can turn into a dragon. Sinclair replied that his brother had an A-rank ability, but Zachary only had an E-rank ability. He roared when he heard about the difference of 3 ranks. The brunette coughed and urged the werewolf not to worry, because he had just joined the organization. Later they could give him F-rank medicine. The werewolf made a funny face. Adam thought about why the guy turned into a werewolf, but he became stupid and cute, like a husky dog. The brunette also said that given the fact that the organization would have to work with a werewolf, he changed it to an E rank for Zachary. He thought, it follows that there are other abilities in the organization. Does this mean that one day he will become stronger than his father? The guy barked, hugging his savior by the torso, and begged Adam to change the ability to a rank for him. He waved it off in disgust. The werewolf continued, shedding a tear, that he would call the boss his godfather, because he had never met a person who would be so kind to him. Adam still tried to discourage the beast, answering that he did not have such an opportunity, because the organization its own rules, and a high rank can only be achieved with sufficient achievements. Zachary obediently sat on his hind legs, asking about the organization. Sinclair answered, urging him to listen carefully. The name of the organization is Judges. It was created by one powerful man. Under the boss there are 12 zodiac leaders, and Casper's pseudonym is the rooster from the 12 zodiacs. The werewolf asked how powerful the boss is, since his godfather is only the leader. Adam replied that there is no need to try to guess. The boss is not someone who often shows his face. He is very mysterious. Zachary immediately asked how quickly he could earn his achievements. The brunette replied that this happens by completing tasks, and the first one has already appeared. Pointing his finger at the werewolf, Bert said that he would use his identity as the young master of the Berkshire Company to find information about the blue pill. The werewolf asked what it was. He was told that it seemed to be a pill that could increase someone's strength. Casper himself arrived in Louisville to find out about the forces behind this thing. Zachary's eyes sparkled. It could really increase someone's power. What a wonderful thing. For this he got hit in the back of the head. Adam sternly replied that there was no need to harbor evil ideas, because there was a hero who used her and accidentally harmed an innocent person. At that moment, the werewolf returned to his human form, scratching the back of his head. Zachary asked who exactly harmed the man. Sinclair said, the A-rank hero of his company, Glacier Adventurer. Wade screamed in shock, amazed by what he heard. Bruce Rash, always acting cool, but in reality he is just a regular drug addict. Casper said that when the young master finds useful information, they will meet here again, and then he will give Zachary a D-rank ability. He nodded his head. When leaving, Sinclair decided to teach the young master a lesson and said he forgot to warn him about something. The effect of the medicine lasts only a week. The guy has limited time, which means the task must be completed within a week. Zachary fell to his knees again, crying out desperately. In the morning, fresh and cheerful, Adam walked along the sidewalk, sipping soda from a glass. Adam walked past the booth with a notice board, drinking a soda from a straw, but turned back. Something caught his attention. On a large sheet of paper there was a caricature of himself, wearing a rooster mask. None other than Regina Craig was looking for him. The ad text read, looking for Uncle Casper Bart, dressed in a black raincoat with a white mask on his face. If you have any clues, please call Regina Craig. The soda from his mouth rapidly migrated onto the glass of the booth. The guy spat it out in surprise, and the male salesman cursed. Sinclair backed away, apologizing for a long time. Adam tore off the sheet and looked at it as he walked, thinking about how many more surprises this girl was hiding in herself. Suddenly he noticed a familiar silhouette in the distance coming around the corner, accompanied by several men in combat uniform. Recognizing the stranger as Regina Craig, Adam was surprised. Had something really happened to her? He ran closer and cautiously looked out from his hiding place. Regina found herself sandwiched in a concrete square, but still stood militantly, with her hands on her hips, asking who her pursuers were. In front of her stood a girl in a bright uniform and two men who looked like ninjas. A tall stranger with a piercing in his nose bared his teeth and demanded that the girl listen to them and give the young master's blade back. Craig exclaimed that she had no idea what they were talking about and that she didn't have any blade. The girl was again attacked from all sides, shouting that she should stop the performance, because, taking advantage of the naivety of the young master, she exchanged the blade for fake jewelry, so she better give up the weapon if she wants to live. Adam immediately knew that it was a legendary S-rank weapon called Iringa, but he didn't know if Regina actually had it now. The girl fell silent and thought for a moment. This means that this blade is actually something good. Regina immediately used her ability. A storage bag appeared in her hands, in which you can store many things. Trying to distract her pursuers, she whistled something under her breath, answering in a sing-song voice that she had never heard of anything like that. They were clearly mistaken. Adam narrowed his eyes and grimaced. What a poor argument. Anyone can draw the right conclusion as soon as they hear her, that this greedy girl received the blade, but does not want to give it back. A dark-haired girl in uniform abruptly interrupted Regina, saying that there was no need for idle chatter. We needed to start taking action. The tall man rushed forward without another word, using military style, triple knives. His companion, putting his hands together in a special gesture, shouted, shadow style, doppelganger. Sinclair was amazed that these two were inherited type abilities, and she was both above C rank. Regina took out a battle fan from her large magic bag and struck a pose. She is not one of those who is easily intimidated. The weapon in her hands is the B-rank Belsung. Swinging sharply, she lowered the fan down. Everything around shook from the suddenly appeared flame. The girl called on the attackers to get away. The men were literally blown away by a deafening stream of wind mixed with fire. Regina waved her fan, which raised currents of air and carried her upward. She triumphantly exclaimed that there was no such rule that could force her to return things after receiving them. A dark-haired girl watched her carefully. She frowned and clenched her fists. Blue, icy flames formed at her fingertips. Ability of rank A Snow Woman. The girl seemed to have doubled in size. Her appearance had changed dramatically. Now she was an adult woman with blue hair, elven ears, dressed in everything blue and scorchingly icy. The space around her became the same. Regina recoiled in shock. Why did it snow suddenly? Adam turned his head slightly, frowning. The next moment, he used his ability to change his clothes to a uniform with a rooster mask. Meanwhile, Regina was already flying to the side, fleeing the Snow Woman's ice attack. She, darting her gaze at her rival, caused a snow typhoon. Craig felt an unusual flow of air behind her. It was the blue-haired stranger who was directing the icy wind at her with her hands. Adam muffledly shouted his friend's name through the mask. Meanwhile, a crowd had already gathered on the street, and even a local TV channel with a frisky presenter arrived to gain views on the live broadcast. Even a snowstorm did not become an obstacle. Nicholas Rowtherf, holding the microphone up to some kid from the crowd, looked into the camera and pointed to the fight, walking on the Belt Parkway, and called out to the heroes for help. Regina, caught in the icy whirlwind, screamed shrilly. She fell to the ground with a thud as the wind threw her down. The Snow Woman immediately loomed over her, asking if the thief would return the thing that did not originally belong to her. Standing up, Craig quickly took two blades out of her bag, smiling cheerfully at her rival and laughingly asking the sweet lady which blade she had lost, silver or gold. The eyes with red irises narrowed warily. Ignoring the threat, the woman instantly turned Regina's legs into two pieces of ice. The earrings on her ears jingled as the Snow Woman shook her head. She warned Regina to be more talkative, otherwise her frozen legs would turn into small pieces. Now Regina had a katana in her hands. The girl pulled it out of its sheath, declaring that she would never fall for other people's tricks, because she received it thanks to her skills, and never threw it away. Regina looked behind the Snow Woman and threw the dagger behind her, exclaiming that she was now giving the blade completely free to Casper Barth. He, standing nearby, immediately caught what was thrown, praising the girl for her agility. But holding it out in front of him, he cursed. Who would need such a worn-out blade, even if they offered money for it? The girl smiled awkwardly. She could not even think that they would pursue her because of this blade. The snow woman shouted to her companions that they needed to grab the stranger, since she and the thief turned out to be allies. On Adam right, their ninja clones attacked from all sides. One of them was rushing towards a guy with a hero shuriken in his hand. Sinclair felt an unusual sensation running through his entire body. Was this blade really absorbing his mental power? Suddenly he was pulled to the side. Is his body really moving on its own? Suddenly the hand with the dagger itself described a circle in the air. The next moment, the ninja's face took on a childishly surprised expression, and the lower part of his body was missing. Adam swore dirtily, shocked by what had happened. As he stood there in wonder, the man with the piercing ran at him from behind, his dagger hand outstretched, shouting "Die!" Sinclair reacted quickly, jumping up and dodging the attack. The hand with the dagger began to move, and a purple haze wafted from the weapon. The guy soared up. His opponents remained far below. The snow woman followed him and quietly pronounced the name of the blade, syllable by syllable. Everything happened at lightning speed. The man who attacked him, as if crucified in the air, stood on weak legs and asked the teacher to save him. The purple haze cleared. Adam was below, walking away with the pearl of someone else's ability in his hands. C-rank ability. 3 blade styles of the sun and moon. 3 blade styles can activate the power of the blade to fight off enemies. But C-rank, it's like holding a blade in your mouth, not that cool looking. Adam shook, bowing his head. Too much of his mental strength was absorbed. The guy thought that he couldn't stand it anymore. There was a loud scream. Sinclair felt the cold touch of the snow woman's icy blades on his back. He thought dejectedly that it looked like he would have to use his revival ability today. A green streak flashed through the air. The crowd raised their heads, vying with each other to ask what was happening. The ice blades immediately split into many pieces. Adam immediately recognized the light of despair. Regina was very surprised. Was it really a lazy swordsman? Not far from them, leaning against the wall, stood a swordsman, rolling a match in his teeth. Ethan Wade headed towards the warring parties, saying that the heroes can forgive arbitrariness in the 6th region, but to sow rebellion in the 1st region is the height of insolence. The snow woman rudely told him that her people had only come here to reclaim their property, while the heroes were abusing their powers with might and main. Regina appeared next to her, who protested, pointing her finger at the woman. This is all her master, who gave away the blade, and now it has become entirely hers. Reaching out her hand to Regina, she thought that she needed to ensure her own safety first, since 2 A-rank heroes had arrived and the chances of victory were diminishing. A lot of sharp ice floes flew towards Craig. The snow woman turned to the hero, warning that she would spare Regina's life and leave Louisville, on the condition that they return what was originally theirs, even if the heroes killed her people. Black eyes sparkled. Ethan mockingly said that no one said that the girl could leave the city, and did not the woman consider the 1st area to be a place where you can come and leave at will? The snow woman remained silent in response. Then Barton turned to the lazy swordsman, leaving the girl for him, and he himself volunteered to test the abilities of Casper. Bart, the swordsman, rolling the match to his right cheek, asked him not to overdo it, because the company intends to get him for themselves. This seemed to anger the hero, as he suddenly rushed at Adam, shouting in irritation that he was not only here to help his brother resolve issues between them. Fortunately, the guy was ready. With the last of his strength, he nevertheless put his sword forward, ready to defend himself. The dragon's fist flew straight towards the unfortunate dagger. Unexpectedly for everyone, the hero was thrown back several meters, raising a cloud of dust. Regina leaned forward in fear, screaming Casper's name, but Ethan wasn't particularly impressed. The snow woman at that moment threatened the heroes with death. Ice needles flew towards the dragon. Regina, who was standing by, tried to dodge the attack. The lazy swordsman rushed to the boys' defense, using the strong wind with his blade, causing them to glow with despair. With every second, the glow, like a sharp saw, was getting closer to the dumbfounded snow woman. It had almost reached her face. The next moment, the sound of breaking glass was heard. The woman, without even having time to make a sound, disintegrated into many small pieces of ice. The lazy swordsman muttered in complete silence without emotion that he missed her. Regina exclaimed that this was not true, because the snow woman had just crashed. The man rolled his eyes. It was just an illusion. She had escaped. but she should still be somewhere nearby. Adam, taking advantage of the commotion, crawled around the corner. He heard Regina catch herself, not finding him. The guy was breathing heavily, complaining about the damn blade, which did not leave a single drop of strength in his body. Bringing the blade closer to the glasses on the mask, he thought, if the weapon is from a monster, he will be able to extract the ability from it. The space turned dark, and vague ripples appeared around the blade. Finally, 2,500 units of dark energy were obtained from the blade in the form of already familiar cubes. A few seconds later, there were a dozen cubes on the floor around the guy. Although he couldn't extract the ability pearl, but he received a bunch of dark energy cubes, and the material from which the blade was made must be from an S-rank monster. The guy wondered what ability he needed to improve in order to be able to go against the dragon. A blue, very bright pearl levitated in front of Adam, which he guided with a leather-gloved palm. D-rank ability metal transformation. Having decided to try it, Sinclair brought the pearl closer to the cubes, which were immediately absorbed into the ball. What happened next came as a complete surprise to him. The pearl changed its color to a beautiful green and increased in size. Now it was an A-rank ability metal control. You can control all metals within a radius of 1,000 meters. The maximum weight of the controlled metal is 1,000 tons. The snow woman sharply turned her head towards Adam, feeling a strong surge of energy. The guy raised his head, looking around. Now he could feel every object made of concrete and metal, cars, planes, buildings. He clenched his fist in anticipation. Sinclair finally had the opportunity to fight someone normally. At that moment, a snow whirlwind was sneakily approaching him from behind, like a huge ice drill. But now it became difficult for Adam to be taken by surprise. He raised his hand, and a stream of fire spread from his body, melting the ice. The ice weapon was instantly melted by the impact. Fiery propeller. Adam was invincible. The snow woman was knocked off her feet by a huge flow of alien energy. She gasped and cursed, trying to maintain her balance. Sinclair turned, and the fiery blades obeyed his every movement. The snow woman, blushing, was indignant. How is this even possible? With one movement of his hand, the guy transformed the fire into long ropes. Those, clashing along the way, tightly grabbed the snow woman. She twitched, demanding to let her go, but the guy asked not to move, noting that he tries to be gentle when it comes to girls. He brought his palm directly to her ample breasts. The girl squealed in indignation, asking what he wanted to do. A large green pearl immediately reached out to Adam's palm, casting light around. A rank A ability. Snow woman calls upon the snow woman to help in battles, and a person can also choose to merge with the god entering his body. Adam thought it was just an elemental ability, but didn't realize it was a summoning type. Literally every man's dream. He held back with one hand the true owner of the summoning ability that had fallen on him, which had completely weakened after being extracted. At this time, he was discovered by the lazy swordsman and the dragon. Ethan asked the swordsman if this was the same passerby whom the hero knocked down. His aura had changed. Adam carefully sat the unconscious girl against the wall, telling the men that he had already dealt with the snow woman. Ethan immediately lost his temper, shouting that such trash could not defeat her. The guy came closer and offered to fight him to be sure, and asked who would attack first. And he suggested that maybe both heroes would attack first. They were silent, looking around at the insolent man. On the skyscrapers of the city, Nicholas Roserf broadcast from large screens to the entire space, carefully following the course of events with an omnipresent microphone. Had he really heard right? And this guy wants to oppose too, despite the fact that both are heroes of a rank. Immediately, various comments began to pour into the live chat. Someone wrote that the evil dragon was able to kill a guy in a black robe with just one finger. Others said that they had become fans of the mysterious stranger, and that he was very intimidating. The presenter rushed towards the impromptu battlefield, without letting go of the microphone, which means there will be an exciting scene of a battle of 1 against 2. Dragon Name looked at the rooster carefully, and seriously said that he would not team up with the lazy swordsman to win, even for the sake of the spectators, because this would cause A-rank heroes to lose their dignity. Adam retorted that he was very sorry, because the battle could have been exciting. The dragon turned his gaze to his partner, noting that in order to defeat the enemy, one must first understand him. The swordsman sharply replied that he himself knew. He also said that the ring on the rooster's hand is strange. Perhaps the secret to the loss of abilities is hidden here. You need to be careful. The man, thrusting his blade forward and causing a small dust storm, went at Sinclair, asking the dragon not to worry, because he just wanted to see the guy defeat the Snow Woman. The lazy swordsman warned the rooster that if he wins, the dragon will be next on the list of attackers. Adam did not answer anything to this, and only beckoned him with his finger. The lazy swordsman took a running start and took off, ready to attack. The blue flame shot up and then changed its trajectory downwards, heading straight towards Adam. He, without thinking for a long time, repelled the blow with a wall half his height made of flame. Suddenly the guy, with one hand, using only his abilities, swung at the hero. He opened his mouth in shock, not understanding what he was trying to do with his bare hands. A stream of fire flowed from Sinclair's hand, which, with a deafening ringing sound, as if taking on a physical embodiment, collided with the swordsman's blade. The man watched as the flames turned into tentacles and wrapped around the blade of his weapon. The swordsman didn't believe it at first, but then he realized that the guy was trying to control his own dagger on his own. But unfortunately, Sinclair did not succeed. He was almost wounded by his own force when the fire rebounded. He jumped back sharply, landing on one knee. Having erected a wall of fire between himself and the lazy swordsman, Adam thought that his dagger was made of monster materials, but it was not metal, and besides, there were no metal objects on the hero's body. At this rate, one could lose. A and E rank abilities were levitating on both palms. Snow Woman and human control. The guy urgently needed to improve one ability to a rank in order to defeat the lazy swordsman and the dragon. He clutched the green ability pearl in his hands. To improve, a purple pearl came up. Human control, which at rank A turned into puppet control. Now it could carry out illusory interference in targets of rank A, brainwash targets lower than rank B and receive their power for 10 years. You can enter puppet body for 2 hours every day. Throwing the ability in the palm of his hand, Adam promised himself that he would use it only for good. The lazy swordsman, fenced off from him by a wall of fire, got tired of waiting, and loudly asked what the rooster was doing. A gap appeared in the wall, and a mechanical mask peeked out, asking for patience. Adam took the opportunity while the swordsman was looking at him and used the puppet ability. The man's eyes doubled and he could barely stand on his feet. Suddenly he saw in front of him, as if in reality, his beautiful sister, who called him by name and asked why he was pointing his dagger at his sister. Robert Roseby couldn't believe his eyes why his sister appeared in front of him. The girl slowly extended her hand to his face, but the warrior, at the cost of incredible efforts of his willpower, pushed away the outstretched hand. The illusion dissipated, and the piece of mirror stretching from Adam's hand flew back. The swordsman, covered in sweat, hissed that the guy really had a double ability. Sinclair did not miss the opportunity to tease the man, and while he rushed at him with a sword, the guy jumped back and told the hero as he walked that he did not expect such weakness from the lazy swordsman, who owned the intent of the storm sword. The man exclaimed indignantly that the guy knew nothing. Finally, the hero sank heavily to the ground, leaning with one hand on the blade, as if on a stick. That girl was his late sister. He could not do this. The crowd roared and split into two camps again, with some calling for the swordsman to get up and keep fighting. Others booed him and admired the black-robed stranger. Nicholas Rowtherf asked the audience, could the man in black use a mental attack, judging by the stunned look of the swordsman. Regina stood next to him, who was also closely watching the battle. The leader again suggested that the hero would soon lose, since his hands were shaking, and he could be ready to withstand the metal ability, but could not cope with the mental attack. Craig waved her hand victoriously, praising Brother Casper. She believed that the swordsman would kill him, but who would then return her 10,000? Adam heard echoes of conversations and thought deeply. The dragon, his dark eyes sparkling with anticipation, leaned forward with interest, praising the lazy swordsman for doing a good job in getting the stranger to use his last card. The man warned him to look the rooster in the eyes, because in this case you could meet the person you care about most, and this would become a weakness in front of the enemy. Meanwhile, Ethan, surrounded by a purple haze, slowly approached Adam. He was clearly already tired of the dragon. The hero's red pupils, like a small flame, flared up even more. He all gathered up, became even larger in size. The space around him turned dark purple. He believed that this battle was of great importance, and he and the rooster needed to make a deal. Adam bowed his head interestedly and asked what the hero would bet on. The dragon pointed a finger with a long claw at Sinclair's hand. If he loses, he will tell the secret of his silver ring. Adam raised his hand and played with his fingers, inviting the dragon to come and take it. He thought that the hero was not at all stupid, because everything he did here was done to attract attention to the star absorption ring. At this moment, Ethan Wade jumped straight at the robed man. He was amazed at the lightning-fast reaction and speed, which was faster than that of the lazy swordsman. But Adam was not a failure. He quickly erected a stone between them, on which the dragon hit with a roar. Sinclair stepped aside and the dragon rushed past. Ethan lunged forward and, screaming, hit Adam in the back with his elbow. The blow threw him far to the side. The mood around changed. The announcer excitedly exclaimed that the metal controlled by the man in black could not keep up with the speed of the dragon. Adam landed on the ground with a crash, causing a cloud of dust to form. The dragon grinned contentedly. A double ability does not guarantee a win. Sinclair struggled to his feet and was now holding his stomach. Even his mask was damaged. Now it had many cracks. The guy coughed. He received severe damage. The hero has high speed, strong attack, and the dragon scales on his body have a high level of protection, and he can also spit fire. Ethan was still smiling as he complimented Adam's strong bones. Sinclair wasted no time in using his puppet control ability. The hero, who was not expecting this, gasped in surprise. His yellow pupils, like those of a cat, dilated in horror. His beloved younger brother, Zachary Wade, tearfully held his throat and begged his older brother to save him. Ethan grabbed his head, trying to drive away the obsession. How dare the rooster turn into his adored brother? Disgusting. Suddenly, the hero's body began to change. He became the earth dragon of black flame, and was now crawling towards Adam. It looked really creepy. The guy was scared. The illusion was destroyed. Did this really only anger the dragon? Nicholas Roserf shouted into the microphone that today the audience witnessed the second phase of the transformation of the evil dragon, and he simply admires the man in the mask. It was he who provoked the hero to take this step. Ethan, with a furious cry of die, rushed at the calmly standing Adam. A moment later, the guy used his metal ability, and a lot of thorny thorns came out of the ground in front of him. The dragon only laughed at this, rushing into the attack with redoubled force. Adam laughed through his mask. The dragon has become a drill. Well, let him try to catch up with him. Now Sinclair, on a huge metal plate, flew up sharply, as if on a magic carpet, leaving the dragon below. He flew up to the guy and again began to mock his strength. Adam did not react in any way, but only commanded the plate to fly forward. Immediately the arrogant Ethan found himself caught in the grip of metal bonds. Vertical pupils looked at Adam. The hero asked if he had forgotten about his black flame. A violet flame formed in the hero's place. He tried to get rid of the metal that bound him. The presenter, wiping away sweat with a handkerchief, continued to comment on what was happening. The black flame of the evil dragon had already melted metal before, and probably this time the enemy would not last long. Regina, who was standing nearby, immediately pushed him in the side with her fist, shouting that Brother Casper Bart is strong. His tactics and strategies are outstanding. He will not do useless things. Ethan really couldn't handle the metal shackles, either throw them off nor melt them. Adam thought to himself that this was a B-rank fireproof shield. It wouldn't melt if it was only burned once. Then Sinclair lifted a nearby yellow car into the air. Next, the red car was used, as well as other metal objects lying nearby. Ethan looked up, not believing his eyes. A truly enormous metal compressed cube hung in the air, an incredible metal control ability. Adam, standing at the top, directed his hand down, putting all his strength into this movement. Fall, Titan's fist. The cube began to fall to the ground. People, seeing the rapidly approaching shadow, ran away screaming. The corners of the dragon's lips turned up. He asked himself if this was really how he would die. There was a deafening roar, and the street was covered with a dust cloud. Time passed and the cloud settled. People were still clearing their throats. The omnipresent presenter suggested seeing if the evil dragon had survived. The crowd approached the metal cube, vying with each other to make guesses about the state of the dragon. Someone noticed a cute flame butterfly nearby. She, whining, was looking for her brother the evil dragon with all her might. The elder mechanical hero arrived after her and ordered her to retreat as she took to the skies to search for her. A man stood on the roof of a high-rise building. He used his ability and sent beams coming straight from his eyes to the cube. That one, under the influence of forces, began to gradually collapse. People cheered when they saw the rank a mechanical hero. Finally, the metal cube split into two parts, and everyone saw the dragon lying unconscious, and the lazy swordsman sitting in front of him in the pose of a samurai. He lowered his head and muffledly said that he was still alive thanks to the wall of sighs and sincerely regretted that he had caused the company to lose face. The mechanical hero came closer, answering that everything was fine as long as the man was alive. The flame butterfly, which flew up to them, cautiously asked if they needed help. The swordsman admitted that she would have to take care of the dragon herself. Some time later, in the common living room of the apartment of Adam and his neighbors, he sprayed himself with a special cooling spray. Lifting up his shirt, he generously sprayed fresh bruises and wounds, and it was damn painful. The evil dragon knows no mercy. The meeting with the snow woman and the evil dragon was quite expected, but his main goal was to focus on the blue pill. There are currently 2 leads. The first is Glacier adventurer Bruce Rashed, and he will hand this case over to Zachary Wade. The second is a B-rank hero, the hero of hot and sour noodles, who is going to hold a fan meeting in the near future. You need to go and take a look at him. Looking at the large number of cans of spray on the table, the guy thought that in the future he might attract more danger if he continued to share the apartment with other people. He needed to prevent them from getting involved. His thoughts were interrupted by Lily Romero, who silently entered the living room and even scared the guy. She, noticing Adam on the sofa, asked what he was doing here, and why he smelled so strongly of medicine. The guy forced a smile, answering that he hit the corner of the table. The girl looked at him incredulously, raising one eyebrow. Sinclair, unable to find room for embarrassment, mumbled that Lily had arrived just in time. He had an announcement. Mary and Karen, who had also just returned, gasped along with Lily when their neighbor told them he was planning to move out of the apartment. He leaned his elbows on his knees, seriously said that it was not very convenient for him to live with only girls. Now, having received a promotion at work and a large salary, Adam decided to move out. Karen pointed at Lily. What about her? Scratching the back of his head awkwardly, Adam gave a strangled laugh. He had nothing in common with Lily Romero. Karen and Mary replied that in this case they would not stop him, and asked him to contact them when Sinclair was free. Lily silently went to her room. Still embarrassed, Adam was glad that this conversation was over. He offered to treat the girls to a farewell dinner. At that moment, the door to Lily's room closed with such a noise that everyone present in the living room jumped. The guy was sweating all over with excitement. Had he really said something wrong? He decided to break the sudden silence, saying that it was better to go to dinner with the whole company. Karen couldn't stand it first. She rudely pointed her finger at Adam and exclaimed that Lily is so beautiful and kind. Why on earth doesn't she deserve to be with him? Why does Sinclair treat her like that? And in general, he's a real freak. Adam squeezed into the sofa and was silent. The girl chuckled, saying that they would have lunch together only after he sorted out his relationship with Lily Romero. The guy sighed heavily. He would be lying to himself if he said that he didn't love Lily, but he also had no right to put her in danger. However, he found the courage to come to the girl and knock on the door. He was immediately invited to enter. Lily was lying on the bed, legs dangling. Adam could not see her face. Sinclair immediately asked for forgiveness, but the girl interrupted him irritably, because he himself said that he had nothing in common with Romero. Adam replied that he did not mean that. Lily's emotions were seething over the edge. Blushing, she turned to the guy, asking if the reason for his refusal was her past. He flared up and recoiled, assuring that that was not the point. Then Lily asked again why he didn't like it. Adam took the crying girl by the shoulders. They could always remain friends. But Lily did not give up and continued to ask why her neighbor didn't like her. Adam understood perfectly well that Lily's attitude towards him was due to a lack of security. She simply compensated with his help for the lack of love from her parents. And now, when he did not reciprocate, everything turned into hysterics, because the girl was sure that it was all about her past, and this made people look down on her. She is like a porcelain doll that can break even at the touch of someone who cares for her, and if Adam suddenly hurts her. Sinclair wanted to explain himself, but Lily suddenly turned away, saying that perhaps what the guy was saying was correct. Taking Adam's hand in hers, the girl said that she was in a hurry, deciding that kissing marked the beginning of a relationship. Looking at the guy through tears, Lily asked him to become her first official boyfriend, even if their time had not yet come, and it hurt her that they could become strangers to each other. Sinclair exhaled and promised her this. Evening came and the richly furnished mansion was noisy. The glacier adventurer, Bruce Rashed, was lying on the sofa, drinking strong alcohol from a glass with might and main, egged on by the company. Zachary Wade watched the hero from behind the open door. If not for the task of his godfather, he would not have spent money on alcohol and entertainment for Rashed. Carefully creeping into the room where the hero was already snoring, the young gentleman began searching through his pockets. My hand came across a box that felt unusual to the touch, but the glacier adventurer stood up abruptly. Asking what Zachary was doing, he jumped up and immediately put the box back. A bead of sweat ran down his forehead as the guy found a way out. He turned around with a cigarette in his hands, saying that he had lost his lighter. Bruce, flushed from alcohol, looked around and asked where the girls had gone. Wade grinned predatorily, asked which one he liked. He would ask her to take a bath with his brother Rashed. He laughed and asked for the one wearing overalls. Later, Zachary, carefully listening to the girlish giggles outside the door, began rummaging through the things of the glacier adventurer. He was looking for that very box among personal belongings and women's underwear. Finally, luck smiled on him. The young master exclaimed triumphantly upon opening his prey. The box contained a lot of substance pressed into cubes. Zachary took one and brought it closer to his face, not understanding what was in front of him. Looking straight ahead, the guy realized that he really wanted to eat one cube. But reason prevailed over desires. He told himself a firm no. A small piece broke off from the square. Is there really a blue pill in this thing? Clutching the cube in his hands, Zachary looked blankly in front of him. Suddenly a loud, drawn-out female moan was heard from the direction of the room. The young gentleman jumped up and flew out into the corridor like a bullet. Bruce was already raging there. He made up his mind and took one cube out of the box. Then he hid it in his jeans pocket. Zachary returned and knocked carefully, calling his friend's name. The door swung open, and a puzzled glacier adventurer stood in the threshold, all flushed and sweating. The young master, knowing in advance what awaited him, looked behind the hero's back. The girl was lying on the bed unconscious. He stammered and asked what was wrong with her. Bruce indifferently said that the girl was dead and went to collect his scattered things. Fearing that he would notice that he was missing, Zachary tried to talk to the hero, saying that everything was in order, let him leave, and he himself would ask his people to deal with the girl. Wade saw Bruce off and waved at him at the exit, telling him to take care of himself. The young gentleman himself fell exhausted onto the sofa. He was scared to death that he would be caught at the crime scene. The glacier adventurer headed to his car in the underground parking lot. Suddenly he was overcome by incredible rage. The hero grabbed the box with those same cubes. Throwing the box onto the dashboard of the car, Bruce cursed dirty as the pills spilled out. Veins appeared on his face. He became so irritated, since he started taking the pills, he could no longer control his strength. His hands were shaking so much and sweat was pouring down his face that the guy ordered himself to calm down. Bruce accidentally glanced at the box and quickly put the scattered cubes back together. Suddenly he realized that one tablet was missing. However, it doesn't matter, there are only a few days left until the next game. With thoughts that it doesn't matter whether he loses one pill or gets it, the hero left. Adam was driven by George Ripley in his car to his new home, wondering along the way how it was possible to move out of his previous apartment, doubting his friend's adequacy. He, turning to the window, replied that these were stupid illusions, because living with a bunch of girls was completely inconvenient. The blonde smiled insidiously. This inconvenience was all the charm. Sinclair grimaced. Old George was becoming a real pervert. His friend just chuckled at this. Finally, the guys drove up to an elite house in an expensive area. Ripley marveled at how his friend got the money to rent such a good apartment. Adam replied that his adopted son gave him a gift. Taking the box of things in his hands, Adam smiled, listening to George exclaim in disbelief how he managed to adopt a child, probably won the lottery, and definitely got to treat his best friend. Actually, muttered Adam, it was true, but Ripley didn't believe it. When the move was completed, Adam happily stretched out in his new huge bed. He had eaten his fill, and was now left alone, although now he felt a little lonely. Sitting up in bed, he realized that after the fight with the evil dragon, he had not yet used the call of the Snow Woman. Although Adam spent some of the dark energy to improve the puppet control ability, the remaining energy is still an ability. It's time to see what this girl is all about. Throwing an orange pearl on his hand, he sent it in front of him. A portal formed in the air. Then Sinclair summoned the Snow Woman. But he did not at all expect what happened. At first his gaze lingered on the tiny elven ear. Adam jumped out of his seat, not believing his eyes. In front of him stood a tiny girl in a robe inspired by Japanese traditional clothing. Wearing touching tabi and shoes with straps, she looked with huge eyes, connecting 2 index fingers. The large window was covered with a crust of frost. Adam was shaking from the cold. Snowflake apparently could not control her abilities. She put one knee on Sinclair's bed, worriedly asking if he was okay. The guy waved his hand in fear and asked not to come closer. She, like a puppy, looked into the owner's eyes and asked him not to worry, because Snowflake would not harm him. But the temperature might be a little low. He, wiping his nose, was surprised by the new nickname, and suddenly remembered something. Raising his hand, he used the flaming fist ability. A small dancing light appeared on his palm. The girl screamed joyfully and asked permission to come closer. Adam could not even think that Snowflake was not afraid of fire, and she answered, stretching out her hands to the fire, that she loved warmth. The light flew up to her lap. The girl giggled, bringing her palms closer. Snowflake was glad that she had such a wonderful owner. Adam thought that it was fortunate that the cold air generated by Snowflake was only a passive effect. Otherwise this C-rank ability would not be able to withstand the cold air. Narrowing her eyes, Snowflake peered carefully at Sinclair. The owner was also warm. She clung to Adam's leg, who recoiled, scolding her. But the girl had no intention of leaving. She only pressed herself closer to his knee. Adam decided that since Snowflake was so cute, he would not drive her away, and pulled the blanket towards him. Now they both sat under the blanket, sneezing. Adam firmly decided that he had allowed himself weakness only today. This would not happen again. The next day the whole city was buzzing with anticipation. Finally, there will be a fan meeting for the hero of hot and sour noodles. People vying with each other shouted the name of their pet, and confessed their love to him. Adam, like a real agent, stood in the crowd wearing a themed crown and sign. Today he disguised himself as an ardent fan to get closer to the hero. There were so many fans that he was soon almost run over, stepping on his feet and even clinging to his hair to get closer to the stage. A large woman appeared on stage and solemnly addressed the audience, announcing that the superhero hot and sour noodles was ready. Everyone present shouted that they were ready to see him. The presenter slyly asked the crowd to chant louder. They obediently complied with the request, again shouting the name of the superhero, and how much they loved him. Fireworks exploded, and the long-awaited star appeared on the stage. The hero dropped to one knee, and exclaimed that the audience was now safe, because all dangers would be crushed with his iron fist. He stood up and raised his hand, and the crowd cheered. Adam looked with disgust at the random people who prevented him from approaching the stage. Finding himself almost at the edge, Sinclair almost fell. The superhero hot and sour noodles noticed this in time. The man extended his hand to catch the unlucky fan. The next moment, Adam found himself in the arms of a superhero, like a girl in the arms of a knight. The hot and sour noodle superhero literally beamed as he loomed over him, and asked him to be more careful next time. Sinclair, smiling from ear to ear, thanked him warmly, apologizing for his clumsiness. When Adam took a vertical position, the men introduced themselves and shook hands. The fans present did not hide their envy after all. It was incredible luck to be next to the legend. When shaking hands, Sinclair managed not to give himself away, and transferred some ability to the hero of sour and spicy noodles. The pearl rested in his palms for a split second, then disappeared. The guy's glasses sparkled in the spotlight as he squeezed someone else's hand and admitted that he was a fan. Finally, the fan meeting ended. People gradually dispersed. The hero of hot and sour noodles, dressed in a shirt and jeans, hid his hands in his pockets, and his manager, the host of the meeting, breathed a sigh of relief, praising her boss for a good job. As they headed towards the star's car, the man remarked that it was a difficult job, and he also had to shake hands with so many people. He needed to sanitize his hands soon. Having sat down in a soft chair in the salon, he sent his assistant to lunch, and he decided to take a nap in the car, since another show awaited him. The woman worriedly asked whether he could withstand such a load. The superhero irritably slammed the door in the manager's face, finally saying that he had to keep up with everything, and also asked the manager to clear his schedule for the next weekend to celebrate his daughter's birthday. The man sat back in his chair, thinking out loud that he needed to earn more money to pay off the huge debt he had accumulated. Maybe he should go back to gambling. He scratched the back of his head and forbade himself to do it. Suddenly, A strange voice was heard from the back seat. He asked the superhero if it was not tiring to live like this. The man sat for several seconds frozen, like a statue. Turning around sharply, the superhero of hot and sour noodles, sweating profusely, began to babble, asking if it was Casper Bard who fought the evil dragon, and how he got here. The black-robed man thought that he could now know about the hero's location due to the ability pearl in his body. Adam asked the man not to worry, but only to answer a few questions. He thought that since Casper single-handedly defeated the dragon and the lazy swordsman, he had no choice but to obey. The superhero warned the man in the robe that even if he and the other heroes are in the same company, they may have different positions, to which Casper replied that he understood everything and asked to look him in the eyes. Sinclair did not hesitate and used puppet control. The superhero's eyes widened as he felt his mind being invaded. The guy found himself in some dark space with a scattering of stars. Was this really the inner world of the superhero hot and sour noodles? Several screens with the memories of the owner of the space were displayed above Adam's head. Sinclair realized that this was the superhero's past, but the memories of the blue pill were nowhere to be seen. But suddenly one of the screens showed a strange man who was holding a pill in his hand. He was dressed in a formal suit, wearing a bowler hat on his head, but the face itself was blurry, looking like outer space stirred by someone's big spoon. The mask looked sharply in that direction. Who is this man? Meanwhile, he handed the superhero a pill, saying that as soon as he ate it, his abilities would increase. The man would be able to reach the top of his career, pay off his debts and finally return to his family. But when the superhero of hot and sour noodles wanted to snatch the pill from his hands, the stranger sharply raised his hand up. The pill can only be exchanged for information. The superhero's face was covered with sweat. He asked what kind of information. The space on the man's face moved, mixed. He wanted to know the secrets of some heroes. His interlocutor did not hesitate, and immediately began to tell. The dog hero is secretly playing with. The crazy hero acts as secretly holding children captive. Adam, without blinking, watched this performance. Stretching out his hand to the screen, he wondered, is this information scandalous? And is it possible to get a pill just for knowledge, or are some other transactions needed? He flipped through the screens like the pages of a book, looking for additional information. Did the men meet more than once? Yes, there was a second, third, fourth meeting. Finally, at the next meeting, the stranger became interested in Casper Barth, the new owner of abilities, the hot and sour noodle superhero, who was willing to do anything for the sake of a pill, nodded in agreement, shouting that that man not only bullied the chairman's son, but also defeated the evil dragon and the lazy swordsman. The man adjusted the bowler hat, and asked if there was information related to the ability. He needed to know everything. Later they met in an underground parking lot. The worried man remembered everything he knew. Casper can erase the abilities of others, but he has never shown his face in public, so it is unknown what he looks like. The stranger scratched his chin with interest after hearing such information. He threw a transparent bag with a dozen pills into the superhero's palm. As if drugged, the man was hunched over the pills, nodding as if in a state of rage as the wandering stranger ordered him to gather more information about Casper for his daughter's birthday next week. Adam stepped aside, folding his arms over his chest. It seems that the reason for the appearance of the blue pill is to capture the weaknesses of many ability holders, then corrupt and control them. He looked into the distance, wondering what the purpose of these people was, since they secretly controlled so many heroes. The superhero hot and sour noodles woke up, shouting that a real hero knows how to forgive. Then he noticed that he was alone in the car and began to look around in surprise. In the evening, Zachary obediently waited for his godfather, wondering why he did not come, because he himself had already been bitten by mosquitoes. Right behind him, he heard an authoritative voice asking what the guy was talking about. He shuddered in fear at the unexpected appearance. Zachary happily ran to the man in the robe. He had finally arrived after so many hours of waiting. With an insidious look, he held out a box containing a protective capsule and the pill itself. Zachary made a great effort and received the pill from Bruce Rashed. Adam brought the pill to his eyes. The color and quality were the same as the one that the superhero hot and sour noodle had. Zachary mentioned that it was because of this thing that Bruce killed a man. Was it really a side effect? Sinclair replied that in pursuit of power and glory, these depraved heroes are capable of anything. They will not be afraid of side effects. Wade then exclaimed that his godfather was right. These people do not deserve their title. Adam looked at the guy seriously and asked what, in his opinion, a real hero should be like. The young master wondered, does this question carry the burden of the organization's expectations regarding him? Striking his chest, he exclaimed that he thought the more powerful a man was, the greater the responsibility he bore. Heroes must make the salvation of humanity their life's duty, and must not betray their faith for the sake of power and glory. Sinclair grimaced. Well, what movie did this guy copy the line from? He tossed a vial of red liquid to the young master and praised him, saying that including the organization funds deposited earlier, it was enough to exchange them for a D-rank ability potion. Zachary caught the potion and sked in displeasure. Just AD. Adam calmly replied that the guy should improve his skills slowly, not strive for instant success, and if the potion is not needed, then he can return it. Zachary shook his head, thanked him, praised the color of the potion, and then drank the contents of the flask in one gulp. Sinclair thought that he should combine 2 E-rank pearls first, and then patted Wade on the shoulder when he noticed that the potion tasted like ketchup. Well, that was just his imagination. Moving behind Zachary, Adam did what he had planned, the D-rank ability werewolf power. Now he does not depend on moonlight, and can freely turn into a werewolf. Zachary felt his face, asking out loud why he had not transformed. Sinclair mockingly thought that for this he needed, first, to activate the pearl of the ability. The mask raised his fist in the air, his expression impossible to read behind the dark glass. Perhaps Zachary needed to warm up a little to understand how it worked. The guy turned around and, stuttering, asked what the godfather wanted to do. The next second he received a blow directly to his right eye. Adam calmly said that one must endure in order to be stronger. The godfather must be ruthless. The unfortunate young gentleman, with a full black eye, whined that he was in pain. For a few more minutes, in the silence of the forest, cries of pain and requests not to be hit in the face were heard. The fluffy tail wagged. The young werewolf muttered in admiration that his ability had improved. He felt a huge surge of strength. Adam asked his godson to cancel the ability when the wolf, holding a t-shirt in his hands, turned to him. The mask clarified that maintaining such a form is quite tiring. The transformation happened. Zachary joyfully exclaimed that he managed to transform back. Sinclair noted this and ordered to continue to monitor the blue pill. Because people who use it are emotionally unstable, you need to be careful. The guy got dressed and thanked his godfather for his care. Casper then gave instructions to gather information about disreputable heroes, but not in order to make them followers. As Wade suggested, after all, not everyone can join the judges, especially heroes who were simply pawns. The young master fearfully asked if the organization was planning to absorb their power, to which Adam, summoning an iron plate to fly away on it, replied that this is how the potion of abilities is taken, and wished his godson to work harder to collect the necessary materials for his C ability. Zachary almost burst into tears. It turned out that after half a day of work he had only been promoted to C rank. He, looking at the silhouette of the godfather, stood for a long time, making a visor with his palm. He will fulfill this mission. Adam went to a place where there was no one, on the sea coast. The metal plate slid gently through the air, almost touching the surface of the water. Landing on the sand, Sinclair took off his mask. An empty beach in the middle of the night is the most suitable place to train the abilities of the snow girl. He extended his hand, and a bright yellow portal appeared over the sea. This is how the guy called upon Snowflake. The girl appeared and immediately rushed to her owner. She missed him very much. Adam barely managed to dodge the cold embrace. He stopped the baby, shaking his index finger, and said that now is the time to develop her abilities. We need to conduct a training battle. Snowflake babbled that she didn't want to harm her owner, but Adam only grinned. A summoned spirit of C rank would not be able to harm him. The girl, standing on a stone in the water, caused a large wave, exclaiming that she was starting to attack. Sinclair looked at her from under his brows and smiled. It was time to attack. The girl focused on her feelings to cause a snowstorm. Suddenly, some unusual crevice of black light appeared in the sky above her head. Adam gasped in shock when he saw this. From there stretched out a limb that looked like a frog's leg, only much larger. Then an ugly head with sharp teeth and bulging eyes appeared, and a strong body. It was a ranky pumped frog monster, a humanoid beast that loves to exercise its muscles, has a pair of strong arms. Excited, Adam frowned. There was a monster invasion, but it's good that it's only D rank. But after the frog, a huge predatory unicorn appeared in the crevice, an aquatic animal. He was extremely good at running on water. Adam, realizing that he did not have time to help, warned the girl at the top of his voice. Both monsters immediately rushed towards Snowflake, sneakily attacking her from behind. She looked at them, as if spellbound, for several seconds. Then she sharply pushed away from the stone on which she stood and flew away to the side, leaving the enemy with nothing. Adam cursed as he flew up on the metal plate. Suddenly, right in front of him, out of nowhere, a bright light appeared. The guy covered his face with his hands. It was so dazzling. The edge of the ice parted, and the same snow woman that Adam saw for the first time while fighting with the heroes appeared in the sky. She frowned and hovered over the monsters. Were they really looking for their death? Thick snow was now falling from the night sky. The pumped-up frog, baring its teeth, put one paw on the sandy shore. She, watching the girl, croaked and giggled disgustingly. The snowy woman cursed when she looked at the newcomer. Adam was surprised that she returned to her old image. Snowflake replied that this was her combat form. Now her body was no longer that of a child. The clothes changed to more revealing ones. Sinclair blushed, as always fierce and tough. The snow woman threw several snow lightning bolts at the frog, thus trapping him in an ice trap. The monster, just like Adam, was fascinated by the beauty of the warrior, and is now frozen in ice, looking at her with loving eyes. Adam put on the mask and asked if the alien was dead, but the girl replied that she was not yet. At that moment, the pumped-up frog broke through the ice with strong arms and jumped high with a croak, trying to reach the people. Sinclair used the plasma ability. The monster kept dodging the attacking substance. He jumped from side to side, expertly avoiding attacks. Finally, Adam ordered the snow woman to finish off the alien, who obediently aimed ice arrows at the monster. A few seconds later, the pumped frog lay on the rocks, croaking furiously, its limbs firmly nailed by ice arrows. Adam chuckled. The easiest part remained. He released streams of plasma at the frog. The attack became fatal. There was an explosion, and life began to drain from the alien at that very second. The metal plate fell down. Adam approached the defeated monster. He sat down and did what he had to do. He extracted the D-rank ability physical training. Physical endurance and other indicators will be constantly strengthened through physical exercise. It is noteworthy that by becoming stronger, trying to remove the limiter, a person will not last long. The snow woman carefully called her owner, who was intensely peering into the distance. It seemed they had lost someone. Standing on the sand, surrounded by a snowstorm, they did not know where the unicorn had gone. Snowflake turned towards the city and expressed the assumption that the monster was heading there. Adam nodded, about to pursue the alien, but suddenly noticed that something was wrong with Snowflake. The girl grabbed her face, and a child's voice was heard accusing her of trying to regain control of her body. Sinclair ran up worriedly and asked what was wrong, but Snowflake, flushed, shouted that her name was Jasmine Miller, and she was not really Snow Woman. Suddenly she grabbed Adam by the collar with both hands, and shouted that even if she didn't think that the second person would succeed, she should be the first to. The girl closed her eyes tightly and reached out with her lips to the amazed Sinclair. Before she could kiss her owner, she turned back into her previous version and hovered awkwardly in the air. Adam immediately caught her so that the girl would not fall. Setting Snowflake down, he knelt down in front of her, asking who she really was. The girl stood silently, trying to understand what happened. She looked up at Adam in surprise, asking what happened to her. The guy stroked her on the back of her head, surprised that she didn't remember anything. Snowflake's huge eyes looked with incomprehension. She only remembered the beginning of the training. This means that the girl has two personalities, and they are not connected by memories. Snowflake joyfully raised her hands. The owner patted her on the head, and now let him hug little Mia. Adam smiled awkwardly. Did they both really like him? Suddenly Mia sank to the ground, muttering that she needed to sleep. Sinclair suggested that she return and rest. The girl yawned and stretched, saying that she would be bored, while she was carried away by the golden glow. Adam was left alone again. He turned towards the city spread out in the distance. The monster was indeed heading there. Meanwhile, Zachary Wade was driving home along the road near the embankment in his luxurious open-top car. He was a wolf, a predator rushing across the field. Out of his peripheral vision, he noticed a strange splash in the water. Turning his head, the guy peered into the darkness. He noticed with horror a huge unicorn with glowing eyes, who was running straight through the seething waves. Zachary immediately turned sharply in the opposite direction. On the beach, very close to the water, a late company of 4 people was having fun, 2 guys and 2 girls. They did not notice at all what was happening in the water. Wade ran out of the car and from afar shouted at them to stop eating, because the monster was approaching them. The sitting guy turned around. The girl next to him said in surprise that someone was waving to the company. The blonde frowned. Just because that stranger has a sports car, that doesn't mean he needs to show off right away. The blue-haired girl listened and realized that the stranger was warning them of danger and asking them to leave. The company turned around at once when they realized that this was not ordinary boasting. They screamed in horror. The unicorn was already very close to the shore. The monster was still grabbed by the hooves of the sea waves, but he was rapidly approaching his prey. Zachary grabbed his head. What to do? How to save them? He, not expecting this from himself, rushed forward. How could this be? He had never been so responsive before. The young people fled in all directions. The blue-haired girl found herself in the water, and now she was stretching out her hands, begging for help, apparently from the blonde. Suddenly someone's strong hand grabbed her wrist. The girl was surprised when help arrived. It was Puckliash from her company. The guy took a log with him and ordered his friend to hold on to it. Since the wood was large, the girl shouted for Puffy to hold on too. The guy hesitated, holding out his hand. He was so glad that Annabelle was okay. At that second, a huge unicorn jumped out of the water, completely grabbing the guy's hand. Blood sprayed out. The girl screamed in horror. Tears flowed from her eyes. She began to call her friend. The waves swallowed the guy's heartbreaking cry. Meanwhile, Zachary swam up to the crying girl, shouting for her to swim to him faster, and they would get to the shore together. Annabelle, sobbing, asked him to first save Puffy, because he was dragged into the sea. Welch returned. It would be better to first save the girl so that the monster does not hurt her too. Annabelle threw herself on his neck. She was madly afraid of the monster. Welch ran out of the water, clutching the girl in his arms. He was amazed at how heavy she was, even though she looked very thin. Zachary heard the sound of helicopter blades behind him. Indeed, a helicopter flew to them, apparently from some TV channel, from where the report was being conducted. On board, a pretty blonde girl said that the station had received many reports about a monster and huge waves on the coast of Louisville, and offered to check the condition of the victims. Those on board noticed a couple who miraculously escaped death and escaped danger. Zachary lowered the girl to the ground and suddenly heard not very flattering information about himself. Internet celebrity young Mr. Welch is ready to die for the sake of flirting with a girl. Meanwhile, at the Berkshire Company office, Ethan Wade was working out his abs in the gym, while talking with the lazy swordsman. Now he was saying that the hero David Evans went with his father to a meeting of the Hero Association. The swordsman was working out on a treadmill and laughed at his friend. Was he really jealous? And someone could take his place. Breathing heavily, the dragon stood up, answering that he was not jealous at all. He did not have to adapt to the bureaucracy, and this was better for his strength. Suddenly, the lazy swordsman shouted and drew his attention to a TV nearby. It showed a monster on the shore and Ethan's younger brother. Wade was skeptical about the plot. The hero must have made a mistake, because Zachary would definitely run away if he saw the monster. Meanwhile, the guy ran away with Annabelle in his arms. The unicorn followed them. The woman on the plane was scared. She hoped that the heroes would arrive on time, otherwise the monster would catch the people. The dragon realized that this was not someone's stupid joke, and grabbed the TV with his hands, shouting that for some reason this idiot Zachary was pretending to be a good guy. Why doesn't she leave the girl and run away? The unicorn was getting closer and closer to its victims. Zachary continued to run as fast as he could. He dared to look behind him for a second to see where the alien was. The lazy swordsman shook his head. The young master is finished. The dragon clenched his teeth, tears flowed from his eyes, and he angrily whispered the name of his beloved younger brother. Suddenly, the lazy swordsman, pointing his finger at the TV, shouted in shock that the brother of the demon dragon could also transform. Zachary had truly turned into a werewolf, and now Annabelle looked like a doll in his hands. The dragon stared blankly at the screen. His brother has the power of transformation. Finally, the werewolf landed at a safe distance. He carefully laid Annabelle on the sand, and she looked at him with loving eyes and called him her hero. Zachary playfully flexed his muscles. You don't need to be obsessed with him. He's just a legend. Turning, Wade rushed straight at the unicorn, shouting that a real man does not run from danger. He will kill this monster. Adam, levitating on a metal plate, looked at Puckliash lying on the sand. He saved him in time, otherwise there would have been a tragedy. Now it was time to watch his godson fight. The guy raised his hand, and with him, sharp, dagger-like pieces of stones flew into the air. Seeing the werewolf, the unicorn turned sharply back. Zachary ran after him into the water, shouting and hooting with joy. The werewolf sped up to catch up with the alien. His burning eyes narrowed and he grabbed the monster's hoof. Then he swung and hit him on the surface of the water, raising huge splashes. He lifted it up again and spun the horse in the air, as if he were playing carousel. And at the end, with a swing, he released the alien somewhere far to the side. He fell into the water with a crash. Zachary stood tall in the water and reasoned that when the monsters invaded, he was no longer a person who would run or hide when the rescuers came. Raising his hands in the air, he shouted that he must surpass his elder brother and become an S-rank hero. Adam watched him from the rock. Excellent work, and he changed his mind about the young master. A group of young people finally got together. They excitedly began asking questions about each other. Then the long-haired girl asked Annabelle where Puffy had gone. She sobbed, answering that the monster dragged him into the sea when a friend tried to save her. The others stared at the girl in shock. Annabelle pointed at Zachary standing in the water, saying through her tears that this hero would help save Waddles. Suddenly the guy realized that something was holding him tightly in the water. He could not move, and a tsunami formed in the waves, which immediately swirled him around in a whirlwind. A unicorn appeared from behind him, rushing towards him, bending his head with a sharp horn. The next moment, the beast pierced the unfortunate werewolf right through the back. Shaking his head, the unicorn threw the guy aside. The city also seemed to be under attack. Explosions were heard everywhere. The werewolf, bleeding, landed on the shore. A helicopter was flying above them. The girl dispatcher loudly commented on what was happening. Zachary Wade was wounded in the back and received great damage from a double blow with a hoof. The dragon immediately put on his jetpack. The lazy swordsman wished him luck, and expressed his concern, also asking him to take care of the others. A few seconds later, Ethan was already flying to help his brother. However, Zachary found the strength to get up, even though he was in pain. The unicorn rushed at him with redoubled strength. Zachary raised his head in shock. Really again. A huge tsunami formed in the sea, which was approaching the werewolf. The girl in the helicopter was tirelessly monitoring the situation. The monster had gone berserk, and that was bad. Zachary was trapped in water and couldn't get out. He couldn't breathe because of his wound. The guy raised his head and noticed a familiar silhouette on a high rock. He shook his hands and with all his might called his godfather for help. Gradually weakening, he whispered pleas for help with his lips alone. The crowd, watching the battle, were talking worriedly. It seems that the monster is absorbing young Master Zachary. Will he really die? Annabelle sobbed, pressing her hands to her chest, and begged the hero to hold on. Adam was flying on a metal plate and attracted a lot of attention. People watched him, realizing that reinforcements had arrived. Everyone loudly began chanting the name of Bishop Casper Barth. The guy flew over the helicopter. The girl saw him and said that the mysterious Casper Barth, who had already appeared on television some time ago, had appeared again. Adam looked at Zachary and silently thanked him for revealing his abilities while playing bait. He raised his hand up, holding the pill in his hands. It remains to be seen whether the pill will absorb the energy. Someone from the crowd noticed that the metal pillars were bending due to the abilities of the man in the robe. Sinclair immediately caused a rain of sharp pieces of metal. The unicorn noticed him and turned to the unexpected enemy. Adam looked him up and down, suggesting he try something. The guy immediately pointed metal needles at the monster. They dug into the horse's body, causing the animal to neigh painfully. The monster's tsunami stopped, and Zachary began to fall into the water. The girl in the helicopter screamed in shock that the mysterious Casper Barth knocked out the alien with just one ability. Adam flew towards Wade to catch him at the plate. The unfortunate guy immediately turned into a man. Adam landed on the water and swam up to the wounded unicorn, intending to take away his ability. The guide bent down and ran his hand through the monster's fur. Now he had a D-rank ability Surf Master, which allows him to walk on water and control its flow in order to attack. Sinclair turned to the unconscious Zachary. He helped attract the attention of the blue pill, and now he will receive all the well-deserved laurels. Adam began to slowly sink onto the sand near the shore. A few minutes later, Zachary and Puffy were lying on the sand under the gaze of the crowd, with Annabelle on duty next to them. The guy's wounds were treated in time. Their lives were not in danger. Welch was the first to take off, screaming about how much pain he was in. A blue-haired girl threw herself on his neck with a hug, thanking him for saving Puckleash and her own life. The guy blushed deeply, saying that this was nonsense, and also asked cutie Annabelle not to hug him so tightly because of the wound. People from the crowd ran up to them, asking what changes had happened to Zachary, because they talked about him as a bad son from a rich family, to which the young master replied that he was a hero of justice who protects humanity. Zachary watched his godfather fly away and thought about how grateful he was and would do everything he could to serve him. Some guy from the crowd called Casper Barth a real god who appears at the right moment, deals with the monster, and also abruptly disappears without praise. Suddenly someone touched his shoulder. The guy screamed. Zachary turned towards the noise. The grumpy oddball came out to him. The man turned to Welch, because he had violated the rule of using abilities, so he needed to go to the Hero Association. Those present began to whisper, speculating who this man was, probably from the Hero Association, as indicated by the sign on his clothes. The people from the association always interfere in everything, are too pushy and always follow the rules, and this man is called Grumpy Scissorhands because he does terrible things with special respect. Zachary timidly muttered that he was just saving people. Grumpy put his hand forward, saying that the associations don't care about the reasons. If a guy doesn't have permission to use his abilities in public places, then he's breaking the law. But suddenly an authoritative voice was heard, which said that this issue would be resolved by the Berkshire Company, and he wanted to look at who dared to send his brother for interrogation. The crowd parted for the militant Ethan Wade, who had already donned his heroic uniform. Zachary was surprised to see his brother there. He, looking at Zachary with black eyes, praised the werewolf's regeneration potential, because the wounds had almost healed, and asked the guy not to create problems next time. He turned away and agreed irritably. Grumpy decided to leave, but finally said that the Berkshire Company would be able to give the Hero Association a comprehensive explanation that they would accept. The dragon watched his brother, who was laughing surrounded by people, and thought about where his abilities came from and why they suddenly awakened. When everything calmed down, the wounded were taken away, and the crowd dispersed. Adam returned to his home in the morning. He had just taken a hot shower and was drying his head, sitting with only a towel on his hips. Sinclair looked at the water element ability he had gained. He thought that he had many elemental abilities. Flame, plasma, metalkinesis, surf master. If he can combine them, it will be quite interesting. The guy sat with his hands behind his head, dreaming that he could someday cure Trisha, because having tried many abilities, he feels their power, and will try to find a healing one. All that remains is to find information about a person with such an ability. Now he can only try to penetrate the body of the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles to look for some useful information. He activated the control ability. The superhero of Hot and Sour Noodles walked carefree down the street, humming something to himself. Suddenly he threw his head back. The pupils of his eyes turned white. He exhaled heavily. Now Adam took over his mind for a while. Sinclair examined his or her own hands. The ability of control allows you to successfully capture bodies. The guy tried to test his abilities, but activating metalokinesis led to nothing. He thought with disappointment that the ability remained in his body and did not move with his soul. Suddenly he heard a girl's cry. A stranger was turning to someone, demanding that he follow her, but not use force. Adam ran up and hid behind a tree to see and hear better. The green-haired guy grabbed the beautiful dark-haired girl's hand, shouting that if she didn't want to join the Divine Dragon Company and undergo training, she had to follow their company rules. His glasses fogged up and his cheeks turned red as the guy talked about the attractive body and face of his interlocutor. The girl grimaced at this, trying to escape. The stranger lifted the hem of her skirt and offered to please him and the boss, the Reverend Lord of the organization, because he has excellent healing abilities and experience in such things. Adam was amazed at what he heard. This was what he was looking for. Meanwhile, the guy grabbed the girl by the t-shirt, practically tearing it. She screamed, demanding to be left alone. Her pursuer flew up from a powerful kick in the ass. The brunette couldn't help but be shocked and fell to the ground. The green-haired guy was buried in a bush under a pile of leaves. His head appeared from above, and an angry scream filled the street. Adam loomed over him in the body of the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles. Playing with his fists, he introduced himself to the green-haired man as his karma, which would now bring down retribution. The guy pointed his finger at the hero, furiously asking why he was interfering in his own business. He hugged the crying girl by the shoulders and asked how he would feel if his younger sister or daughter were dirty harassed and blackmailed. The guy grinned. The girl had been quietly doing an internship at the company for many years, and was clearly not suffering, but with all her heart wanted to get this chance. The girl sobbed and screamed that she would never have thought about this, and that she would stop talking nonsense. Adam asked her to think about it. If something starts once, it will not end later. If she wants to become a heroine, let her focus on her goal and dedication. The brunette looked into his eyes devotedly and thanked the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles for saving him. Then she turned and spat at her pursuer. The girl left, and the guy and Adam were left alone on the street. The guy clenched his fists and remembered that in order for a superhero to transform, he needs to eat something sour and spicy. The effect lasts no more than 15 minutes. But where does he find such food? He shook his fist, shouting that this idiot had let her escape and destroyed everything he had worked for. The consequences would be incredible. The superhero folded his arms across his chest and asked about the consequences. The guy rushed at the man, putting his fist forward, threatening to make him disabled. He stood there without moving. Adam popped an orange pill into his mouth, and he immediately found himself in the form of the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles. A hot spicy transformation took place. The guy opened his mouth, not believing what he saw. The man did not waste time and aimed his fist straight at the impudent man's chest. The guy, like a ball, flew off into the bushes again. The Hot and Sour Noodles superhero heard sounds from that corner and turned around. The guy shouted muffledly that the eaten capsule prolongs the transformation by only 15 minutes, and when the time is up, he will beat the hero until he asks for mercy. Adam asked the time again in disappointment. He thought about the fact that the ability cannot move with the body, but it increases internal strength, and since it is connected to the soul, it means that after collecting so many abilities, his own strength has become incredibly frightening. Due to the fact that the power of the ability directly depends on internal strength, the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles can last no more than 15 minutes. He cannot control the energy, and spends it all until he reaches exhaustion. And therefore Adam's transformation may last longer. Adam, in the body of a superhero, laughed with anticipation. Using his ability, he saw exactly where his opponent was hiding. The guy ran in that direction, shouting that only weaklings hide. The guy who was lifted into the air by the collar asked in horror how the hero found him. Was he really a B rank? The man smirked as he replied that he was actually hiding his true power. The guy, sweating profusely, asked to spare him and let him go. Because today he lost, he promised to call the Divine Dragon Company, where the superhero would be offered a financial reward. Still holding his opponent in the air, Adam set a condition: only if he does not create problems and seek revenge after his release. However, he smiled because the green-haired one reminded him of something. He screamed in fear, asking what the man was going to do. Seeing that the man was staring at his groin, the guy squealed in fear. Was the superhero really gay? He then tried to establish contact and offered to talk calmly without violence. Adam smiled predatorily. He can not only teach the scum a lesson, but also eliminate resentment, hatred, and persecution from other people. After this incident they will only find trouble for the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles. Adam, in the body of the superhero Hot and Sour Noodles, grabbed the guy by the leg and dragged him into the bushes. The screams of the unfortunate man were heard. He begged not to take off his clothes and to spare him. After some time, a satisfied Sinclair, already in ordinary clothes, was walking down the street. He taught the impudent man a lesson by photographing him in an unsightly state. Adam was sure that after these photographs he would not harass weak girls and cross the path of the hero of Hot and Sour Noodles. He wrote a reminder on the phone for the owner that new photos should not be deleted so that the forest ranger does not create problems. The owner of the body must understand what was written. Now it was possible to leave the superhero's mind, which Sinclair did by deactivating the control. The Hot and Sour Noodles superhero woke up staring at his cell phone screen while his mind was somewhere in the background, squeezed out by Adam. He looked around furtively, sleepily surprised that he was still in the park, and thought that he had accidentally fallen asleep. His gaze fell on the inscription on the phone screen left by Sinclair. The man read it in bewilderment, and immediately switched to the gallery. What he saw caused the hero's face to become covered with crimson spots, and the calm silence of the park was deafened by his shocked cry. At this time, A meeting of the Heroes Association was held in the city of Louisville. The leader of the Hero Association branch, Oliver Reed, was present in the office. The mechanical hero glared at him, with the glacier adventurer standing on his right side. The leader also had a co-leader, Samuel Adams. Oliver, clasping his hands in front of him, seriously addressed the mechanical hero, explaining that planning the first stage of defense requires the help of heroes. The scale of the depressions is very large. Extreme caution is required. Samuel explained the plan. Everyone must create a role model to attack and force the monsters to return to their world. The heroes will drive the monsters away. Two guys sitting at the table, presumably planning to join the ranks of the heroes, vying with each other, shouted words of support for the association and willingness to give their lives for it. This time, the purpose of the association is to allow each organization or company to send an A-rank hero to the core deviation center and strengthen control over the depressions. The mechanical hero narrowed his eyes. The intentions of the turning party are clear, but by taking the form of a hunter, someone can profit from this. The most important thing is the information that the world of monsters has the ability to improve items, equipment, or weapons. And so this is the most important reason why the heroes were so eager to do this work. Here the word of the strongest has weight. The possession of the owner of one ability is the key of the organization to achieving a high position. Bruce Rashed, with a bit of madness in his eyes, called for improving the special element of the ability. In the evening, Adam carried out experiments in his room. Having activated cloning, the very next second he looked at his exact copy standing opposite. A clone, in general, turned out, but it looked at him strangely. Two pearls were levitating in the guy's palms, the abilities plasma and metallokinesis. He was thinking hard about how to connect them. A lot of black cubes rained down. First, the low-level metallokinesis had to be dismantled, then the plasma had to be upgraded to level A, and an auxiliary ability of rank B would also be needed. B-rank ability Shadow Substitution, Shadow Clones, 3 in number, their location can be changed during the battle, are capable of creating weapons for attack from shadow matter. Adam threw the pearls at his clone. The transformation was activated. The guy addressed the clone by the name that he called those around him. Casper. Bart must remain cool and domineering. Now the clone had a closed dark heroic costume, as well as a white mask with blue snake prints that completely covered his face. Only his expressionless eyes looked at the world as if at an empty place. Smiling insidiously, Adam ordered the snake to become the second saint who would reap the abilities. It was his turn. A large plane landed on the ground of the 2nd District of Iowa City. Deftly maneuvering between confused passengers, Adam left the airport. Looking at the beautiful architecture of the streets, the guy dragged a suitcase on wheels under the scorching midday sun. He never thought that it would be so hot here. Suddenly, a yellow car stopped right in front of him, nearly knocking Sinclair off his feet. The windows slowly rolled down. The large mustachioed taxi driver immediately guessed that the visitor was from the 1st District and asked where he needed to go. A few minutes later the car was taking Adam to his destination. The guy checked his mobile phone. Zachary told him that he had sent information about the members of the Saints organization to his email, and also wished his godfather speedy success. Adam reread what he had written for a few seconds. It was great news. The taxi driver pulled him out of his thoughts. Looking carefully at the client in the rearview mirror, he unceremoniously invited the guy to visit the Sambo or Alibes casino. Since the most developed area in the city was the gambling business, the man guaranteed that after a major victory he could safely return to the hotel. Then, already turning to Sinclair, the taxi driver noted his beauty and added that he knew another good place. The restless driver immediately took out a bright postcard, which depicted a girl in a swimsuit. Dreams of Paris, a place where girls are full of enthusiasm, and not so expensive. Adam frowned. Iowa really is a city of chaos, since even such establishments operate here without problems. Finally, the car drove up to a tall building, the Heaton Hotel. When Adam was already handing over the pre-agreed money, the man announced a new price: 500 coins. The shocked guy looked at the counter. The price had increased 5-fold. He, angrily flashing his glasses, asked if the driver had calculated the price correctly. He chuckled and replied that the rest was an explanation. Let it be a lesson for a simple boy who came to the 2nd District for the first time. Out of nowhere, a pistol appeared in the hands of the taxi driver. He slowly turned to the client, pointing the gun at him, and said that it was worth thinking about. if you choose what is more important, money or life. Unfortunately, the man did not know who he was dealing with. Calmly looking into the eyes of the criminal, Adam hissed that it was definitely not him who needed such a lesson, and applied control of the puppet. A few minutes later, the guy was already standing in the lobby area and filling out documents at the reception with smiling employees, who gave him the key card to the room, and also reminded him that he could use the help of the staff. Sinclair thanked him. Behind him loomed a red-faced, confused-looking taxi driver, who, moreover, helped him carry his suitcase. When the guy and his retinue left the counter, the girls were surprised to notice that the gentleman was able to get the uncivilized taxi driver to help carry his luggage. A pretty red-haired girl was hastily applying lipstick to her lips. What if the guests wanted to invite her to dinner too? Approaching the elevator, Adam turned to the taxi driver, ordering him to leave as soon as he brought his things into the room, and the man was also ordered to be more polite with the residents of the first district. The driver slowly nodded, agreeing with the gentleman. The elevator slowly gained height, and soon arrived at the desired floor. The guy went out into the corridor and opened a new email. Zachary sent him a photo of a man wearing a half-face mask. He was the owner of the Ability C-rank masked hero, a member of the Saints organization. His current position is the Heaton Hotel, 37th floor, room 441. Adam used the transformation ability, and immediately a white mask covered his face. His clothes became more closed. The shadow of a pursuer fell on the door of the C-rank hero. A shadow seeped into the other side of the room. Sinclair quietly, as if a ghost had materialized in the room. He quietly crept deeper into the room, from where loud conversations and laughter could be heard. There, on a huge bed, invited girls frolicked in lingerie, over whom hung a big man in a mask, wearing only a towel on his hips. The girl kneeling in front of him turned around, and the smile faded from her face. The hero was clearly not himself. He roared deafeningly. Standing up on the bed, black arrows like shadows rose behind him. Some unknown force threw him up. The man looked around sharply. A stranger stood at the door, waving his hand. He activated his abilities and applied them to the hero. Black arrows stretched from his hand. The mask swore, grabbed the blonde by the waist and pulled him closer, outraged that no one was covering him. The arrows lifted the girls up, clasping their necks. They unsuccessfully squeezed the essences that were strangling them. The short-haired girls showered curses on the man. Immediately, the tips of the arrows dug into the captives' foreheads. Their eyes turned white. It seemed that the entity had taken possession of the human mind. The masked hero stood up and tried to deflect the shadows from himself, shouting that the alien would not live if he allowed the man to absorb the fears of the girls. He attacked with his fists the guy standing opposite him without moving, threatening to kill him. Adam immediately found himself a few meters away from the attacker. The shadow seemed to push him back. The masked hero pointed his finger at the guy, surprised by his ability to control shadows, and suggested that he got into the room with their help. The alien was silent. It was impossible to read his emotions behind the mask. Two tentacles coming from his body were still on the girls' throats. They were lying and trembling weakly. Sinclair thought that it was difficult for him to act cold and ruthless, but still, he was sensitive to this matter. The masked hero, in turn, swallowed nervously. If it weren't for the power that these girls gave him, he wouldn't have stood a chance. Black arrows, without warning, shot up sharply and attacked the man. He sat down sharply, and the shadows dug into the bed. The hero began to threaten the stranger. The organization of saints in which he is a member will skin the guy alive when he tells everything. But the guy didn't seem to hear anything. He looked at the man evenly, without blinking. Then the hero pushed off and flew, putting his fist forward, right at the newcomer. Is he really deaf since he doesn't answer the question? Adam measured the huge fist approaching his face with his eyes alone. The masked hero had no doubt that victory would be his, because no one had ever been able to dodge his blow. But to his amazement, the man's hand went straight through the stranger's head, as if through a veil. Moreover, at the place where the kula passed, a black shadow wrapped a vice around someone else's wrist. Gritting his teeth, he kept trying to break free, but the shadow squeezed his hand more and more. The palm reached out to the man's forehead, and he immediately began to beg not to kill him, because the priest would not just leave it like that. Adam pulled the mask off the hero's face. He sobbed shamelessly, choking in prayer. During all the silence, the guy spoke up, calling the man trash. He placed his hand on the hero's forehead, lightly squeezing the skin. Then he pulled away, using his extraction ability. A bright yellow pearl immediately reached out to his hand. Ability C rank Mask of Fear. It absorbed fears and made its owner stronger. The man fell to his knees, mad with grief over his lost ability. He almost crawled in front of Casper, asking him to return it. Otherwise the priest would kill him. The guy asked to look at this priest, about whom the hero constantly talked, with the help of puppet control. Without waiting for an answer, Adam extended his hand, activating the desired ability. A second later, the guy found himself in the space of his opponent's memories. One of the screens lit up. The owner was lying on the ground. His body was pierced through by iron sticks. Participating in the war of abilities, he was wounded, and was slowly dying. A stranger approached him. His face was not visible, but the long skirts of his snow-white clothes covered his entire body. He offered the man a deal, an oath of allegiance in exchange for returning to life. He, barely moving his bloody lips, agreed. Instantly, his entire body was illuminated with a bright light. The man sat up abruptly, frantically examining himself. The wounds had disappeared. He really had survived. He turned, fell to his knees and bowed to the ground before the stranger who saved him, swearing allegiance to the priest of light. Sinclair, being in someone else's mind and body, got dressed, put on a mask and left the room. The hero came to the embankment to a huge cruise ship. Large colorful containers of different heights are lined up here. The man looked around, looking for the right container. The eye caught the numbers on the red one, FS 4396. Adam, watching closely what was happening, remembered that something about a red container slipped into the man's memory. The masked hero remembered being in a richly decorated building. The walls and floor were shining gold. Members of the Saints organization were sitting on nearby sofas, and a little further away their leader was hugging languid beauties. Bloodthirsty Rose, an incredibly beautiful and stately girl with long brown hair and in a revealing outfit, leaned back in her chair when the hero walked in. The girl asked whether a swordswoman had really infiltrated his secret production laboratory. He got down on one knee and bowed his head in front of Rose, assuring that there would be no problems with the attacker. If Lady Rose gave the order, he would kill the swordswoman. A formidable man in military uniform spoke up, the commander of the Deep Sea Army. He chuckled and said that an A-rank hero was not so easy to kill. The great land mage sitting next to him scratched his long gray beard. A-rank would not be an obstacle. Disciples of saints should not be afraid of some A-rank hero. A blonde, handsome man in white robes, sitting above the trio, ordered the ignoramuses to bring the swordswoman here. He would be curious to enjoy her. They immediately jumped up from their seats and stood in front of the man, who unanimously reported that they understood the holy priest. The masked hero sighed. This brat is in for a well-deserved vacation. The commander of the Deep Sea Army heard him, and called him to him. Boxer immediately approached and bowed low, asking what the order would be. The man answered, "The goods arrived at the port, at the first platform, which is in a red container." The commander sat back in his chair, and rolling a cigar in his mouth, lit it with a large lighter. He ordered the boxer to go to the container and find out if there was any information about the swordswoman, and if so, report it immediately. Grabbing the hero by the shoulder, he grinned and said that with every damaged product everything will be fine. If you treat everything responsibly, you should not miss the given chance. Standing in front of the red container, Casper, in the body of a hero, wondered if he could get inside, and what kind of goods were there. Seeing that the entrance was carried out using fingerprints, the guy was delighted and raised his finger to the scanner. He used the plasma ability, and immediately the screen hissed and began to appear in grainy stripes. The container door opened. The hero saw a long staircase leading down. It turned out that the container was just an illusion. The real goods were hidden deeper. Going down, Sinclair felt a terrible smell, similar to blood. When the stairs ended, the man found himself in a huge room with light walls. In the middle there was a table at which someone was sitting. Casper distantly thought that it might be security. The stranger, gnawing a match in his teeth, turned sharply at the sound of footsteps. He immediately got up from the table, and having greeted the masked gentleman like a soldier, Adam quickly got his bearings, greeted him back, and asked if anything had happened today. He replied that a valuable product had recently arrived, and cursed how tired of these creatures he was. The hero was surprised, but did not show it. Ordering him to show him quickly, the guard led him along a long corridor. When they walked a little further, the walls turned out to be cages with huge thick bars. The guy looked around in all directions, crying. Groans and screams were heard from everywhere. There were small children sitting in the cages, and the guard kept shouting at them, threatening to whip them if they angered the masked gentleman. The boys fell silent, looking at their guards with all their hatred. Adam thought distantly, looking ahead, that these saints had gone crazy to keep children in such a place. It seems they were kidnapped from different parts of the world. They are so small, the eldest of them is 15 or 16 years old. The man remembered the expression and words of the commander of the Deep Sea Army. This made him incredibly angry. Casper shouted that he would make him say goodbye to his life and pay everyone who was involved in this. A scream was heard from the distant cells. Someone's male voice growled that he would flog the prisoner to death. The boy's wrists were chained in chains stretching from the ceiling. The child himself, covered in bruises and bruises, was on his knees. His tormentor, a tall blond man with a whip in one hand, with the other holding his bloody ear, from which a piece of flesh was missing, the prisoner managed to bite him. He swung again, sputtering with anger, but he was interrupted by someone else's voice, demanding to stop. The blonde turned around. When the masked hero asked if there were any problems, he replied that the boy attacked him and bit off his ear. The boy, hearing what was being said about him, slowly raised his head and looked angrily at the men with large green eyes. The masked hero leaned over the boy, asking the reason for this behavior. The blonde chuckled. "Why do you need a reason?" Another voice was heard. A guy with blue hair was heading towards them, a preacher of the Saints organization, Mantis with a two-handed sword, saying that the warden wanted to do something with the boy's sister. Adam looked back in shock. A little girl sat against the wall, her head hanging weakly. "This bunch of bastards," Mantis smiled as he noticed that she was scared to death. The guy unceremoniously turned to the boxer, asking what he was doing in the dungeons, because he should be enjoying his vacation, and two blondes, dreaming of hitting Mantis. Sinclair replied that the girls were good, but today he came here to help the commander of the Deep Sea Army check the condition of the goods. He pointed his finger at the shackled guy, ordering him to let him go, because they could pay a large sum for the boy. Mantis grabbed the prisoner by the face, bringing him closer to him. He hissed that he would not mind if the man saved his life, because this brat from the First Territory would lose all his teeth, but he could still be sold at a high price. The boy, who had actually had half his teeth knocked out, spoke in an unknown language through the grip of someone else's fingers. Although those around him did not understand, the prisoner promised to kill everyone. To the surprise of the other men, the boxer understood the boy and told him to be patient, because soon he would fulfill his wish. The mantis turned and grimaced suspiciously, realizing that he understood someone else's language. The man squeezed his palm, and blue fire came from it. He not only promised to fulfill the wish, otherwise he would have come here in vain. In the next instant, the masked hero pierced the burning chest of Mantis. He, sinking to the floor, managed to ask why the boxer did this to him. The man, hovering over the defeated guy, replied that he was similar to the boy, and came from the same place. Mantis shouted in shock that this was not a masked gentleman in front of him. Before he could finish speaking, his head was separated from his shoulders with a sharp movement. The guard and supervisor standing behind him began to babble, not believing what was happening, asking what had happened. At that moment, long black shadows scattered from his body in different directions, raising his hand imperiously. Adam promised that the villains would meet their death here. The blonde rushed forward, attacking the boxer, but the shadows did not allow him to do this, wrapping themselves like snakes around the hands of the warden. Electrical discharges ran from the tips of the arrows to the guy's body. The blonde screamed in pain, thrown upward by electricity, as if crucified. Trembling with fear, the guard opened and closed his mouth. He could only watch his comrades die. Finally, it was his turn. Seeing how the shadows crawled towards him, the man fell to the floor, trying to crawl to the side. He didn't have time. The edges of the bars turned red. Sinclair also took away the abilities of the dead. The boy looked with all his eyes at what was happening, forgetting about the pain. 3 abilities of different colors levitated on the boxer's palms. The boy, plucking up courage, said his name Joe Blur, and asked what the man's name was. Adam stood with his back to the prisoner, not daring to turn around. A second later he looked back, answering that he had come to save the guy. But the guy coughed and reminded him that he had heard about recent events, how a boxer mocked the local children. Sinclair did not react to what was said, only said that everyone would soon know how this would turn out. He held his hand and a blue glow broke the chains on which the prisoner was hanging. The man asked Joe to wait here while he dealt with the people outside. The boy did not answer and quickly walked up to his sister. He pulled her into his arms and the girl began to sob quietly. Adam lowered his head, painful memories of Trisha piercing his mind. He went out into the corridor, where they were already waiting for him, and they gave the command to grab him. The man, angry, threw out many dark arrows. They, like daggers, rushed towards the mercenaries and cut their bodies right in the middle. One after another, splashes of blood flew in all directions. A minute later, the boxer stood surrounded by lifeless body parts. Someone's applause was heard from behind. A red-haired guy in an official suit with a bow tie slowly walked towards the man, smiling. The Lord of Sound, he, having created a small blue tornado in the palm of his hand, imposingly greeted the spearman who appeared opposite him, inviting him to surround the traitor and attack him. The spearman, a man in national clothes, bared his teeth. He had in his hands a long magical spear. Engulfed in flames, it did not cause pain to the owner. The saint invited Edward to attack first. The Lord of Sound brushed his fiery hair out of his face. In his hand, supported by a tornado, a music disc was spinning. The man shouted loudly, "Music!" The boys in the cages grabbed their heads. The disgusting sound seemed to corrode the brain. To confuse the enemy, Adam pretended that he was in pain, but thought that his nervous system was strong enough. Because this music provokes a nervous breakdown in people. But we need to save children with fragile psyches and get rid of this scumbag as soon as possible. The boxer pretended to go crazy from the sound. Edward laughed. No one could resist him. He swung his hand and threw the disc at his opponent, wishing him to burn in hell. Adam immediately made the hero's body disappear. The disc flew through the shadow. The man moved behind the Lord of Sounds. He, not understanding what was happening, recoiled in shock. At that moment, the boxer jumped on his back in one leap, forcing the red-haired man to fall to the floor. Blood sprayed from the saint's mouth. He begged his accomplices for help. The spearman ran up and threw a fiery arrow at the boxer. His pigtails flew up from the sudden movement. As the arrow flew, the masked hero swung at the Sound Lord, holding him in the grip of his body. The fire pierced Adam through and through. It might have seemed like this was the end. He let out a ragged breath as the spear came out of his chest. Unfortunately for his enemies, the man's powerful fist landed straight at the Sound Lord's back. The spearman howled. Was Edward really killed? He also asked with despair in his voice why the boxer was betraying their organization, to which he laughed. Rising heavily, the man answered, "For the sake of these children, and in the name of justice." The spearman already held 2 fiery arrows in his hand and laughed at other people's words. The masked boxer could not escape from here, and the commander of the deep-sea army was already heading towards the containers. It seemed that Adam could be seen through the boxer's eyes. He turned around and grinned dangerously, thirsting for death. The men stood opposite each other. Taking aim, there was a short silence. The spearman growled, a long dark essence extending from his forehead. She bit into the boxer's chest, and he, spreading his arms, took a deep breath. Many fiery daggers flew straight at the man. The spearman threatened him with death if the traitor dared to approach. Adam immediately covered his face with the backs of his hands as the weapon pierced his skin. He sharply moved his arms to the sides. The arrows bounced off his hands and flew back. The Indian was unable to recognize such a maneuver in time. The arrows returned to their owner, and pierced him through. A desperate cry of horror and pain was heard. Sinclair bent over to the floor and exhaled. It hurt. He stood close to the camera. From there, clutching the bars, the baby looked out. He said in a weak voice excitedly that his big brother was wounded, but the boxer replied with a smile that this was nothing, all for the sake of saving the children. He opened the cages one by one, letting the guys out, and ordered everyone to leave one by one, so as not to create a crush. Joe Blur was one of the last to emerge, carrying his silent sister on his back. The boy looked seriously at his savior, and angrily said that he no longer wanted to suffer because of his own weakness, that he wanted to become as strong, and asked the boxer to become his teacher. He thought for a few seconds and agreed, in exchange for eternal devotion. The boy flashed his green eyes and answered with a breath that he would become the most devoted student. Adam used puppet control. Then he handed the former captive a yellow pearl. He pulled back, not understanding what they wanted from him, and fearfully asked the master what it was. The man replied that this is the ability of Mantis, which allows him to turn his hands into swords, just like the saint did. The boy thanked his teacher with admiration. Adam watched Joe leave, still holding his sister in his arms. He turned around and walked over to the lying bodies of his opponents. It was finally necessary to deal with the corpses. The masked hero raised his hand. Pearls of abilities began to reach him, each with a bright light trailing behind it. A yellow beam stretched from the mercenaries with their faces covered with cloth. The master of sound previously had the color blue. Last time, Sinclair had to make a lot of mistakes before he managed to get 2 balls from the frog and the wavy horse. But now there are a lot of abilities and the monsters are weak. The pearls shimmered in his hands. First, you need to improve the body exchange to A rank. A few seconds later, when all the pearls merged into one huge, green color levitated in the palm of the hand. A rank ability, shadow exchange, shadow cloning, maximum 5 pieces. During the battle one of them can move to the place of another person's shadow, is capable of creating shadow weapons for attack. The boxer thought with satisfaction that now it should be easier in the battle with the priest, and left the red container. Suddenly he felt someone holding a dagger to his neck. A militant girl, dressed in the style of armor, but in a more revealing version, held a sword right at his neck. She loudly asked who he was and where all these children came from. Adam carefully turned his head, answering the question with a question, clarifying who she was. The warrior barely had time to speak. The freed guys immediately ran to her, vying with each other to tell her something. One boy, calling the girl's sister Blanche, joyfully said that this hero standing next to her saved them all. Another girl exclaimed that the hero should not be condemned. He got hurt while saving children. The girl blushed deeply and looked away, saying that since this was the case, she asked for forgiveness. Sinclair smiled, assuring her that everything was fine, then asking if she was the A-rank heroine, swordswoman Blanche. The girl nodded. She had already received information about human trafficking, and immediately ran to save them, but the man did it before her. The warrior approached Joe Blur and gently stroked his cheek, asking for forgiveness for being late. At that moment the ground shook, which frightened the children quite a bit. Adam looked around, not understanding what was happening. He himself felt the tremors. Long, as if living, thorny branches with sharp thorns grabbed the 2 boys by the legs and dragged them somewhere. The children screamed at the top of their lungs, begging for help. Long vines with a pink flower on top sprouted over the containers. More and more children were dragged away by branches, causing loud screams. Joe shouted to the foreman, but he blocked him, asking him to wait here. The saints smoothly sank down in front of them. Their leader relaxedly stretched out on a flower. Bloodthirsty Rose laughed at the boxer's words. Did he really imagine himself to be a hero? The commander of the deep-sea army looked at Adam in the body of a hero. The magician of the great land also did not take his eyes off the man. The holy priest, lazily changing his position, ordered the trio to show this insect the powers of the saints. He himself, with the help of his magic staff, applied the ability of the power of magical healing to them. The bloodthirsty Rose arched as the light from the ability shone on it. After a moment, she seemed to perk up and become prettier. Using an ability with such a large range is tiring, but with this power granted to them by the high priest, their abilities will be restored in an instant. The priest straightened his long hair and turned to the swordswoman. She was not allowed to touch the goods of the saints' organization, so she had to surrender, and then her life would be spared. As for the masked hero's traitor, he must die here. Blanche held out her sword in front of her, thinking that she could handle a B-rank hero, but an A-rank hero like a priest might have problems. She warned the priest that the association of heroes was already on the way, so they should put down their weapons, and if they disobeyed, they were destined to die, so they should surrender quickly. The priest rolled his light eyes and ordered the trio to deal with the swordswoman before the association arrived. The saints, without even a second's hesitation, rushed into battle. Blanche stepped forward with her sword at the ready, activating the power of the seal. Adam admired the fact that the girl could unleash a dangerous ability, as befits an A-rank heroine. The warrior pushed off and jumped up, ready to attack her enemies. Everything around lit up with a soft pink color. The great land mage put his staff forward and activated the sand magic circle. A huge sand barrier appeared in front of the warrior, but she quickly dealt with her sword. The magician realized that his creation had just been destroyed, and the girl was right in front of him. She loudly called upon the seal, and the commander of the deep-sea army called upon the establishment of the flow. He put his palms together, and huge streams of water flowed around him in different directions. The warrior swung her cleaving sword, and a stream of fire appeared right from under the weapon. But something immediately distracted Lady Blanche. The bloodthirsty Rose laughed loudly, Her thorny vines squeezed their victims more and more. One boy let out a blood-curdling scream as the swordswoman's fire went straight through the child's body. The girl furiously cursed Rose. She used the baby as a human shield. How disgusting. But the opponent only smiled, answering that goodness is the swordswoman's weakness, and she herself still has many prisoners. It will be interesting to see how she will act now. Meanwhile, grinning evilly, the commander of the deep-sea army gradually turned into water. He was right behind Lady Blanche, swinging his saber. Time counted down the seconds as the weapon slowly lowered onto the girl's shoulders. But a moment later Adam stood between her and the attacker. The boxer's clothes and mask, torn to shreds, lay on the floor. The guide sked. His second mask was almost broken. He pulled out a dagger and brought the blade down on the disoriented commander. The weapon went straight through the man's neck and face. He screamed terribly, covering his face with his hands while blood splashed in different directions. Adam watched him indifferently, stepping aside. The guide blocked Lady Blanche's path with his hand, asking her to wait. The holy priest sitting on the flower stood up, raised his staff, and again used holy healing. The captain's wound healed instantly, glowing with a bright light. He laughed loudly. With the high priest they are immortal. Holding out the staff once again, the priest used enhancement on the trio. They immediately lit up with a bright blue light. Sinclair thought that it was bad that the priest could improve their stats, because all the abilities would rise to A rank in a very short time. The magician of the great land, all shining with a bright white light, put his palms together. Some streams came from him. Lady Blanche screamed in shock that the old man was generating energy. Under the influence of the power, the destructiveness of his spells would reach A rank. The long-range attack could harm the children. Adam decided that he had to stop it. He turned to the girl, giving her 2 opponents. He himself would deal with the rest. But the warrior did not believe that he could cope with the wizard. Besides, the children remained defenseless. The guy, without turning around, had already activated his abilities and asked his partner to trust him. The girl thought for a moment. That stranger looks so mysterious, but at the same time reliable. She really believes him. Raising her sword up, she decided to help clear the way. Like lightning, she rushed forward towards the commander of the deep-sea army, activating the seal as she went. The man repelled the sudden attack with a ringing sound. He swore and ordered the creature to help me. Bloodthirsty Rose snapped. How many times had she asked not to call her that? The woman activated the rose spell. Pieces of red petals and hearts scattered in the air along with the thorny vines. Lady Blanche felt her strength weakening. Rose smiled seductively at this, languidly saying that her body yearns for love, and can awaken this desire in the swordswoman. Doesn't she really feel how hot it has become? Meanwhile, the commander cloned his body. He approached the warrior from behind with clearly bad intentions, and bared his teeth, looking at her form. But the girl immediately activated the seal of the mind, a bright wall of light, throwing away the hostile clones. Rose was amazed. She had never seen a swordswoman have such an ability before. The next second, the girl disappeared, leaving the captain's amazed clones alone. After these words, a straight cut from Lady Blanche's sword ran across Bloodthirsty Rose's body. Bleeding, she heard from the girl that she had recently mastered the ability that allows her to be reborn in a critical situation. It was Rose who awakened her desire. The woman's eyes were bloodshot, and blood covered her stricken face as she turned to look at the swordswoman. The magician of the great land, seeing what was happening, hastened to activate the liberation. A huge and ugly dragon appeared on the battlefield, raising a dust storm with its wings. The children, still held captive by Lien, screamed even louder when they saw the dragon. The monster suddenly flew up to Lady Blanche from behind. The girl turned around and did not have time to react, her mouth opening in shock. Adam appeared in front of her. Raising his hand, he released streams of electricity. The dragon opened its mouth, and the energy went straight into its gut. Sinclair snapped his fingers, ducking slightly. There was a powerful explosion that shook nearby containers. Now the helicopter smoothly descended onto the embankment. The holy priest looked at the destruction. The magician, standing behind him, thanked him for saving him with a healing gift. If not for the priest, the old man would not have survived. But the blonde did not share the enthusiasm of his subordinate. He angrily replied that initially they would have easily dealt with the swordsman, but instead that stranger intervened, and the leader himself even lost 2 B-rank members. The great land mage bowed. Although the saints were defeated, there is no need to worry, because the high priest is still alive, and there is hope that the organization will quickly recover. The man nodded. Indeed, as long as he lived, the position of the saints in Iowa would remain the same. Looking at Adam, who was carrying the unconscious swordswoman, the priest thought that the masked man could repel an A-rank attack that had a growth effect with one hit. He was stronger, which meant he needed to retreat. Adam saw how the holy priest and the magician of the great land were preparing to escape. The priest had already raised his staff. Adam chuckled. He would give the fugitives a few more minutes of life. He approached the commander of the deep-sea army lying on the floor. Now his ability belongs to him. Sinclair extended his hand, his eyes lighting up with anticipation. A blue pearl flew to the palm of B-rank ability, Ghost of the Depths. Enhances the water in the human body, significantly increases speed, can create a wave and a water clone as long as there is at least a small amount of liquid nearby. Adam narrowed his eyes. Bloodthirsty Rose will be next. He, extracting the ability from the woman, looked at her wound. The seal of the sword is merciless. A large green pearl glowed under his palm. The B-rank ability, Bloodthirsty Rose, summons rose vines using the owner's blood that can emit stat-boosting powder to attack enemies, which can result in loss of control over the vine. Sinclair mused as he looked at the extracted pearls. He would destroy these abilities to F rank, and then add the skill he obtained earlier, so he could create another A-rank ability. The pearls, emitting a bright light, gradually collapsed. Gradually, the pieces of destroyed pearls merged into one single A-rank ability. Superbrain improves vision, hearing, smell, touch, taste and coordination, can release a wave that paralyzes the nervous system for a successful attack. Adam took the ability for himself, and was amazed at how the form, sound, smell and taste intensified. Lady Blanche groaned dully and opened her eyes. The guy turned towards the sound. Did she really wake up? The girl discovered that they were alone, and there were horrific consequences from the explosion all around. She asked the stranger with questions. What is the rank of his abilities? Is he really able to create huge explosions? What is his name? Adam, adjusting his mask, replied that he was Casper Barth, from the Organization of Judges. The swordswoman asked the name of the organization in bewilderment. She had never heard of such a thing in the Hero Association before. Blanche raised her head sharply. The rose vines hung limply down, but the children were nowhere to be seen. Sinclair looked behind her, waving his hand. The girl slowly turned around and screamed. The warrior squatted down on one knee as the entire crowd, crying, rushed into her arms. The boys, when asked how they managed to escape, answered that the master's shadows helped them. First, he ordered the shadow to quietly cut the vine and take them to another place. When the explosion occurred, the master used the shadow to create a protective ring that protected the guys. At first the warrior was puzzled, not understanding which master the children were talking about. But then she beamed and exclaimed, praising Casper Barth. Looking around, the girl realized that there was no trace of the guy. Meanwhile, the helicopter of the Hero Association was gently lowered to the ground. From the loudspeaker someone said that the area was being taken under control, and one should not commit rash acts. The plane landed and children began to approach it. A pretty brunette came out from there, Lily Romero. She was noticeably worried. Turning to the operator, the journalist asked for advice. This is the first time she will be interviewed live. What should she ask? The man suggested that we could, first, ask the seal swordswoman, and nodded in her direction. Lily Romero approached the warrior with a smile, introduced herself as a reporter for the Hero Association, and asked permission to ask a few questions. The swordswoman smiled welcomingly in response, nodded, said her name, and comments from viewers immediately started pouring in live, worried about the swordswoman and writing compliments to the new journalist. The first question was that the Heroes Association received a message and arrived at the port of Iowa. It was completely destroyed. Lily asked to tell Blanche what happened here. When the swordswoman replied that she had come here to save children whom the Organization of Saints intended to illegally sell, the journalist reacted quite violently, answering that she had also heard about these villains who were engaged in illegal activities. Lady Blanche shook her head. Nothing will work. The government will not be able to deal with this, because the association has been doing this for a long time, and the warrior herself has made a lot of efforts to get there and get information, and then save the children. Spectators watched the broadcast on large screens in the city and rejoiced at what they heard, feeling sorry for the unfortunate children. Lady Blanche did not forget to mention the masked man. Without him, she would definitely have lost in the battle with the High Priest. Lily immediately asked in admiration who they were talking about. The warrior said that the stranger's fighting skills were superior to hers, and with his ability he was able to destroy the enhancement effect, which is only available to A-rank heroes. Commentators have suggested that it could be the Supermaster Casper Barth. Blanche pointed to the burn area and asked to pay attention to it. It was the work of a man in a mask. On his face there was a mask with a snake pattern. His name is Snake, and he represented the Association of Judges. The commentators asked each other in puzzlement what was happening. The journalists looked around. The master was not here. Then the swordswoman pointed towards the containers. A masked man went there to catch up with the escaped high priest. The high priest and the magician of the Great Earth walked through the underground parking lot. The priest walking ahead glanced displeasedly at the old man. He had already spent the remnants of his abilities on the magician, and asked whether the power of the sand was capable of getting rid of that bastard in the mask. The great land mage nodded confusedly. He filled his environment with magic, and even if that stranger uses plasma to attack, it will not change anything. Adam was right there, listening from afar as the priest gave the order to look for a car so he could drive away and lay low. Sinclair looked at the men again. Since they were about to run away, then this place would become their grave. Suddenly, Adam's phone rang loudly. The saints turned sharply at the sound. Sinclair literally merged with the wall, wondering who might need him. The priest and the magician were getting closer. Adam quickly took out his mobile phone. His girlfriend's name was displayed on the screen, Lily Romero. And why is she calling him at such a time? The phone didn't stop ringing. The magician carefully asked into the void who it was. Adam had no choice but to use the change of clothes ability. He came out from around the corner in ordinary clothes without a mask, putting on a cheerful appearance, as if he were an ordinary passerby talking with his girlfriend. The magician recoiled in surprise when he saw a simple man. He thought out loud that this was a civilian, but the priest pulled him back. You shouldn't be so sure, you need to find out for sure. Meanwhile, Lily playfully asked Adam to guess where she was. The guy was surprised that the girl was not at home. The sound of helicopter blades was heard and Romero replied that she was in Iowa. Adam couldn't believe his ears. As he walked closer to the exit, he asked the girl what she was doing there. Lily said that she had gotten an amazing job. Adam screamed throughout the underground parking lot when he found out about the job. Moreover, Lily dumbfounded him by telling him about the journalism position in the Hero Association, and she had just interviewed the Seal Swordswoman, and was also going to question the masked man. Sinclair literally jumped in place from shock. A drop of sweat runs down the guy's face. With the help of the Hero Association, Lily will quickly discover him. Adam understood that he could not give himself away, so he calmed down, and promised the girl to celebrate her new position, and promised to buy a gift. The men stopped, looking at the leaving stranger. The magician sighed sadly when he heard that the resident was simply talking to his beloved. He was incredibly jealous. Adam went into the shadows, and there he again applied the change of clothes. The priest shouted, warning the great land mage that they had been deceived and the enemy was coming for them. Adam ran out, and the shadows incessantly followed him, awaiting the master's order. The magician summoned electric wolves and set them on the masked man. The wolf rushed at the guy, and seemed to run through him, wounding him. Adam opened his eyes, falling to the side. The priest grinned. They needed more agile earth creatures to cope with the attacker. The magician said with satisfaction that each of them could compete with an A-rank hero alone. The enemy simply would not have time to react. But something happened that they did not expect. Adam, frozen like a statue, looked at them point blank, and black arrows were flying around the guy with all his might. The shadows, as in previous times, cut everything they reached in half. This time the victims were wolves. The next moment, the shadows pierced the men too, so quickly that they reacted after a split second. Bleeding, the priest screamed offendedly that this was impossible. Doesn't the masked man have an electric type of magic? The shadows gently passed through the host's flesh, and then abruptly burst into other people's bodies, mortally wounding them. Adam said that she uses not only electricity, and the magician, spitting blood to the side, refused to believe that the guy was the owner of the magic of two elements. The holy priest, barely moving his tongue, asked for mercy, promising not to remain in debt if the masked man allowed him to live. He called for silence, putting his finger to his mouth, or rather, to the white emptiness of the mask. He saves people's lives not for his own benefit. In most cases this is done in the name of justice. The shadows suddenly wrapped themselves around the necks of the saints, and the priest screamed heartrendingly. The magician could not do this either, the arrows wrapped around him so tightly. The priest hardly raised his hand to his mouth, and several blue pills fell there. Adam ran up to the men, noticing that one of them had taken pills. The shadows retreated from the priest. He bent over, his body shone with a white-yellow light. The priest's eyes went crazy, veins appeared on his face, he bared his teeth terribly, hissing that it was the enemy who forced him to do this, and he not only knows how to heal. Suddenly the priest put his fingers in his mouth and drool ran down his chin. Screaming deafeningly, he began to pull some kind of weapon out of his throat. Adam noted that he had felt this way before. Laughing, the man turned a spear of justice with a sharp tip towards Adam. The priest took a fighting stance, drawing his spear back. It literally burned with bright yellow fire. He also called upon the revival of the sacred thorns, and raised his spear hand upward. Small fire portals began to appear in the air. Endless spears, combination copies of justice, flew out of the spaces one after another. The priest ordered them to bring justice to the criminal. Adam saw fiery arrows rushing at him from all sides. He quickly dodged the weapon, jumping upward. But wherever he ran, the spears followed on his heels. They would definitely not leave the guy behind. One of them hit my knee painfully, leaving a deep wound. The distraught priest laughed. Even if the masked man runs and jumps, he will still die at his hands. Adam knelt down on one knee, breathing heavily. It was bad when such a light attack could wound his limbs. He raised his head and looked at the roof. The light spread across the entire ceiling, allowing him to instantly determine his location. The guy decided to check who was faster, who the spears were again heading towards him. The priest laughed again. Is anything really capable of surpassing light in speed? All that was left of the man was his outline. Adam activated the super brain ability. His eyes lit up like fire. The spears continued to fly, not slowing down for a second. The priest did not yet know what had happened. He continued to stand, confident in his victory. Adam, with a dagger clutched in his hand, instantly moved to the other side. He, moving at the speed of light, and even faster, moved around the priest. Swift shadow blades, bright rays fell on the man like a fanfare. Adam finally landed a few meters away from his opponent. He loudly ordered him to surrender. He trembled, but still asked what the guy meant. A bright light was approaching the priest, attacking from all sides, and the next moment the arrows pierced the man, leaving no chance of life. He, choking on his own blood, realized that the enemy had 3 abilities. The priest, trembling all over, tried to heal. Hanging over him, Adam pronounced, as if a sentence, that it was useless to heal, because he would have to die again. The man desperately clung to life, hot tears flowing down his cheeks. Sinclair extended his hand to take such a valuable alien ability. A rare A-rank ability, inherited Heart of Light, gives the ability to heal physical wounds of the owner of B-rank and below, increases the characteristics of B-rank abilities, allows you to hide the owner of A-rank and below, gives the ability to heal yourself or a target A-rank and below. The Spear of Justice can use light and create a large spear that can destroy an opponent. Adam, without hesitation, applied the treatment to himself. He thought that he did not expect to see the blue pill from the priest, because he himself almost died. The guy approached the old magician of the Great Land, who had a large wound on his chest. Adam took away his ability Sand Magic, which makes it possible to change the landscape through the use of sand and summon an attacking sand monster. Sinclair turned around sharply when he heard the sound of a helicopter. The Association of Heroes had arrived. From the loudspeakers came, "We are taking this area under our control." Adam, with the help of his abilities, changed his clothes, deciding that he would leave everything as it was for the heroes. A crowd had gathered at the entrance to the underground parking, and it was impossible to drown out the roar from 2 helicopters. Lily Romero worked properly while inside, telling viewers live that, judging by the sound she heard, the walls and floor of the building were cracked. It seemed that a fierce battle had taken place here. Coming closer, the girl saw the leader of the saints in Iowa, the high priest, bloodied and hanging from spears. The camera showed a close-up of the man's wound. The comments went off scale. Mostly people were happy that the scoundrel was dead. A man from a team of reporters called the others to show their discovery, the body of a great earth mage lying nearby. Lily held on for too long. When she saw the old man, she apologized, blushed, and covered her mouth with her hand. The cameraman shouted after her that Lily needed rest as she ran to the corner. The girl was sick of what she saw. Fortunately, she managed to be away from the filming process. Having finished, she saw someone's hand with a bottle of water in front of her, and heard a gentle voice. It was Adam Sinclair himself. She asked in surprise what he was doing here. He replied that he was nearby during her call, and when he saw how much noise the Hero Association had made, he realized that Lily would be here. The girl blushed deeply. Her boyfriend was not nearby at the time of the brilliant interview, but again caught her in awkward situations. The couple hugged. Lily whined about how awkward she was on the first broadcast, but Adam calmed her down, saying that Romero was beautiful, no matter what she did. The operator turned to see if his colleague was feeling better. But I came across a loving couple. He swallowed, and stumbling slightly, started talking about the girl who was found by the rescue team. She was kidnapped by the organization, and now she needs to be interviewed. Lily blushed as she peeked over Adam's shoulder. Nearby, adults were pulling children out of the cracks. The girl wasted no time and ran in their direction, shouting goodbye to Adam to wait for her. The cameraman almost cried from the scene he saw. It turns out that he never had a chance to get close to Lily. The journalist had already approached the girl and spoke to her in a gentle voice. Adam, crossing his arms over his chest, watched the girl with emotion. A green pearl, the heart of light, levitated in his palm. Sinclair thought that he would soon be able to return to save Trisha. Now he has brought all the elements together: wind, sand, fire, water. Also high-rank abilities: light, darkness, sand, lightning, metal. Soon a third unknown person from the Organization of Saints should appear. Well, let's call him Dragon. Iowa Central Hospital was in full swing. The children brought by ambulance were sent to the hospital one by one so that the doctor could examine each one. Joe Blur sat on a bench indoors with his head bowed with his unconscious sister. He was upset because he never saw the teacher. The boy heard footsteps and suddenly raised his head. It was him, his master. He put his finger to his mouth, calling for silence. Adam used the ability of control to enter the hospital undetected. The guy sat down on the bench next to the children and pointed to the girl. Joe answered in a dull voice that he knew that his sister was dead and wanted to take her home, but could not allow her to stay in that place. Sinclair objected, praising Blur for his intelligence, because it seems that the girl is still alive, just too weak. The boy almost jumped out of his seat upon hearing these words. Adam used the ability of holy healing, taking out a white pearl. The girl opened her eyes, the same green as her brother's, and immediately called him, blinking sleepily. Sinclair also used the ability on the boy, telling the children that they needed to recover. He ordered Joe not to talk about his sister's quick healing. Later he himself would take them away from here. Wiping away uninvited tears with his fist, the boy nodded in agreement to the master. Sinclair asked to be called a teacher, and gave the child a suitcase with money, supposedly from the organization, for a good life. In return he asked Joe to infiltrate the class of heroes of the Ivy University organization. Joe immediately assumed that he would need strong abilities. Adam said that there was nothing to worry about and handed the boy a ball with the ability to imitate, together with the power of the praying mantis. This should be enough to enter the university. The pearl penetrated Joe's body, illuminating the space with a bright light. Ability C rank imitation, 5 senses simulating an improvement in strength and agility, but no more than 10 times the original talent. The boy exclaimed that he would not let the teacher down. Let him not worry. Adam, leaving, asked the student not to try to find him. He would later contact Joe himself. When leaving the hospital, the guy changed his clothes and took off his mask. Lily Romero blocked his path with her hands on her hips. She threateningly asked where he had run away. The girl had to look for the fugitive for a long time. Adam replied that he was helping children at the hospital. Lily exhaled and smiled. Finally the guys were saved. The association now had to contact their families. As for homeless children, they will be sent to a shelter and will live there. Sinclair said that the orphanage is one big family and expressed hope that the children will grow up healthy. Lily clung to him and pressed a kiss to his lips, causing the guy to blush on his cheeks. The kiss was so unexpected that he opened his eyes in surprise. The girl, blushing along with him, said that Adam worked a lot these 2 days. A colleague called her to say goodbye. Then Romero waved to Adam, citing a lot of work, calling him her favorite. They would definitely see each other in a few days. The Crimson guy thought upset that he was again deprived of the opportunity to spend time with Lily. The plane was finally leaving the Iowa airport. Adam, back in Louisville, came to the hospital to visit his sister. He hoped the holy healing would work. The guy extended his hand, releasing the ability. Everything lit up with white light. The pearl clung to Trish's body. Seconds passed, but nothing happened. Sinclair stared in shock at his unconscious sister. He called her name loudly again. Grabbing the bed railing, the guy looked blankly ahead. She doesn't wake up. How is it possible that the ability wouldn't work? Suddenly he saw something strange. Small blue balls appeared above the girl's head. Adam extended his hand. There was an evasion. Sinclair stepped back in shock. The blue balls instantly split, but at the same time became stronger, feeding on Trish's energy. It seems that the Heart of Light cannot cope with this blue radiation, but it will not allow them to feed on Trisha, otherwise the sister will never wake up. It's time to stop going slow and steady, Adam thought, remembering the strange man from the mind of the hero of hot and sour noodles. If he really wants to solve Trisha's problem, he must face whoever gave the superhero the pill. But first of all, Adam himself needs to become stronger and improve his metal control, cloning and transformation abilities. There was a combination of 3 abilities. The bright colors of the pearls merged together. A yellow and large pearl was now levitating in the guy's palm. C-rank ability transformation gives the ability to transform in 0.01 seconds, can slightly change the physique, appearance, voice and personality, improves acting skills. The C-rank ability cloning creates a clone that is 8 times weaker than its owner. Its life expectancy is half an hour. Adam clenched his teeth. A green pearl shone in front of him. With all the accumulated abilities, he will definitely be able to advance to S rank. The guy fell to his knees from an excess of alien energy. Finally, she appeared in front of him. The S rank ability is metal control, capable of controlling metal within 1,000 meters, not exceeding 100,000 tons in weight. Adam thought with interest that since this was an S rank ability, he couldn't wait to meet that mysterious person. Late in the evening, on the roof of a skyscraper, the hero of hot and sour noodles was waiting for a meeting. Sinclair had already used his control ability. A purple crack appeared in the sky. Adam in the hero's body raised his head, watching. A man with a comical face walked out from there at a leisurely pace. He hovered over the hero, with his hands in his pockets. They had not seen each other for a long time. The man got straight to the point, asking if there was any new information. The hero of hot and sour noodles crossed his arms over his chest, answering that he wanted to know about Casper Bart, but did he have enough money to buy this information? The man straightened his bowler, answering that if the information was reliable, he would pay twice as much. The hero said that a couple of days ago the organization of saints was destroyed, and asked if his interlocutor knew about this. He replied that he knew. It was done by the seal swordsman Blanche from the Hero Association. The hero said that during the report, Blanche reported interesting information. An unknown person helped her, introducing himself as the Snake. The man shrugged. He already knew that Casper Barth and the Snake are from the organization of judges, and this is a well-known fact. The hero seriously said that both Casper and the Snake are the owners of 2 abilities, to which the cosmic person suggested that perhaps the judges accept only such heroes into their organization. The interlocutor objected. Such people come across very harshly, and he did not think that this was possible. The man leaned forward interestedly. Is the hero really leading to the fact that the superhero held out a flask with an elixir of abilities in his palm? The man extended his hand, repeating the name in fascination, but the hero of hot and sour noodles sharply squeezed his palm, explaining that after use, a person will be able to gain a new ability, and a user without superpowers will become their owner, and those who already have one will receive additional strength. If the man had a face, he would have grimaced. But now the alien screamed that this was nonsense, complete nonsense, and demanded proof. The hero opened the flask in one motion. Turning to the man, he offered to demonstrate the effect, reminding him of his superpower of the body its strengthening. He drank the blue liquid in one gulp. The flask immediately cracked in half. Adam raised his hand, generating powerful flames coming straight from his body. The alien looked in admiration at the fiery volleys. Could this really be a fire-type ability? Sinclair told him that he had previously made a deal with Casper Barth. That's where the information came from. Thanks to the blue pill, he believed in the existence of such things. The alien said that this was incredible, and in this case the hero should know the components of the elixir. The hero smiled. He didn't know this, but he told everything he knew about, and now it's time for the reward. The spaceman briefly said that he had heard interesting information, and then handed over a jar containing 15 blue pills. Stretching out his hand, the hero said that he needed to ask something. Recently, he discovered that his body began to be covered with light blue spots in places. Could this be the effect of the pill? The man turned around to go back into the rift, answering as he went that this was just an unremarkable side effect, not worth paying attention to. Turning around one last time, he said that he was looking forward to his next meeting with the hero of hot and sour noodles. Finally, he disappeared, and so did the rift. Adam immediately detransformed back. He thought that even after discovering the effect that causes loss of vitality, they call it an unremarkable side effect. What is their plan? The guy walked further, sitting behind a technical pipe, leaning against the wall, the hero of hot and sour noodles himself, immersed in suspended animation. A child's voice was heard calling for Dad. Sinclair threw a bottle of pills at the hero's feet. He said that if a man does this for the sake of his daughter, then he should stop taking these pills. The choice is his. The top of a child's head peeked out from around the corner. The girl called for her dad, and when she saw him, she ran up, asking why he was sleeping on the roof. The man rubbed his forehead, asking little Mimi for forgiveness for falling asleep. The girl furrowed her eyebrows. Dad said that he would spend her birthday together. Suddenly she noticed a bottle of pills and asked what it was. The man grabbed the bottle and raised his hand up, sternly saying that it was not a toy. He definitely came here to meet that alien and get the pills. But why can't he remember what happened after the deal? He decided that he would think about it tomorrow and took his daughter off the roof, promising to eat cake together. Late at night, Zachary, stretching, walked along the corridor of his house, loudly saying that he could no longer endure this treatment. He can't do this, he can't do that. When will he be released? Walking past his father's office, he saw a light through the crack and was surprised that he was still in the office. He looked inside, talking about how his old man needed to go to bed earlier, but he was surprised to notice that the office was empty and walked to the desk. Wade's gaze came across a lonely document. Curious about what could be so valuable that could keep the old bones working until late at night, he took the paper in his hands. Several requirements for the Raven location plan in the city of Louisville is what was written there. Zachary was incredibly happy, and even jumped. The white area is located here. This is the best chance for him to become a hero's savior. Adam had arrived at his work, and was now printing flyers on the large office printer. A colleague egged him on in a friendly way, asking if he had forgotten that he had a job and where Sinclair had been. Zachary approached Adam, asking if he was friends with George Ripley, so the guy was doing his bidding. He told a colleague that a woman had come into the newspaper bureau and asked to publish an ad about a missing person. The flyers were ready. A missing person announcement. A 7-year-old boy, Scott Depp, was wanted. George grabbed the paper and loudly commented on what was written there. Boy Scott Depp, has anyone ever heard of this? Adam waved his hand at him and asked him to leave and not distract him. Ripley only curled his lips displeasantly at this. The humorous atmosphere was interrupted by a voice from the loudspeaker. A monster invasion has been detected. An A-rank disaster. Citizens, please go to shelter. Heroes of B rank and above, we ask you to report to the Street Belt Parkway to resist. The sudden announcement made George fall to his knees. Someone was already running as fast as they could from the office. Adam thought, if he was not mistaken, that street is next to the apartment where Lily and the rest of the girls live. He grabbed the phone with lightning speed, while a wave of panic rose in his chest. Lily picked up the phone, and he immediately screamed, asking where she was now. The girl answered in a choked, scared-to-death voice. She was in the apartment, but it seems that there was also a monster nearby. Lily screamed heartrendingly into the phone, and the connection was interrupted. George, seeing his friend's frightened face, asked what happened. But there was no time for chatter. Sinclair took off and ran to the exit, not paying attention to the cries of his friend who asked to stay, because Adam was not a hero, and there was no point in going anywhere. The guy quickly got to the epicenter of events. He had already managed to change his clothes and choose a rooster mask. He couldn't hesitate. Adam couldn't afford to lose Lily. Standing on an iron plate at roof level, Sinclair patrolled the city, and was amazed when a huge something passed him, emitting a squeak bordering on ultrasound. It was an A-rank monster, a soul-eater rat, can attack opponents by screaming, has very thick skin all over its body, its normal attack is blocked with great difficulty, loves to devour people, a very scary monster. Adam thought hard as he looked at the monster. To defeat an A-rank alien, you would need at least a team of 3 or more A-rank heroes or higher. To defeat the Soul Eater rat, the B-rank heroine, Green Storm, a beautiful girl with dark hair and a revealing heroic outfit in the Chinese style, was called upon. The C-rank heroine Fire Butterfly flew to her aid. Noticing the target, the rat growled loudly. She really didn't like the butterfly's fiery wings, so the heroine was immediately attacked by powerful ultrasonic waves. The sound was so powerful that it punched a hole in the building opposite. Butterfly almost died, but the Green Storm managed to save her, picking her up in her arms. After releasing Fire Butterfly, Storm scolded her for her spontaneous actions, because C-rank heroes are cannon fodder in a battle with an A-rank monster. The girl, embarrassed and stuttering, said that she was nearby and saw Green Storm fighting alone, so she decided to help. The A-rank heroine sighed heavily. A desperate cry for help was heard from the direction of the destroyed building. Right in the place where the sound completely damaged the building, there was a girl hanging on the edge of the destroyed apartment. They tried to help her. Lily Romero held onto an iron beam with one hand, and with the other hand tried to pull Karen Walt, who almost fell from the upper floors of the skyscraper. The girl sobbed desperately and begged for help, saying that she did not want to die. Lily tried to calm her friend down, promising that she would definitely save her. But the neighbor did not calm down. She kicked, repeating, like a prayer, that she did not want to die, while the sharp part left over from the destruction was breaking off from the destroyed ceiling. Due to the shaking, a dangerous piece of limestone finally broke off, sparkling with a sharp edge. With all his might he drove straight into Lily's hand, with which she was holding on to the iron crossbar. The girl, feeling a sharp pain, could not stand it and let go of the crossbar. Staggering, she fell down. Karen fell rapidly along with her. The Fire Butterfly managed to pick her up in her arms. The girl, still not believing that she had been saved, continued to cry, and timidly asked if she had really been saved. Butterfly winked, cheerfully answering that citizens who were unlucky enough to get into trouble, "Do not be afraid, C-rank heroine Fire Butterfly is here, to save you." All actions were quickly recorded by a camera broadcasting live. Commentators admired the heroine. The journalist was horrified and screamed, "Where is the second girl?" Lily continued to fall like a stone, but suddenly a shadow suddenly flashed into the camera. This did not go unnoticed by people who began to comment on what was happening. The girl reporter looked around. She also saw something rushing through the air. It was impossible to say what exactly, but one thing was important: the girl was saved. Green Storm flew up to the helicopter from which the report was being made and ordered it to fly away. It turned out that the rat noticed the contraption that was bothering it, and directed its deadly squeak there. Green Storm immediately generated a blinding blast. The helicopter managed to fly off in the opposite direction. The ultrasound was successfully eliminated by the ability. It seems like it took a lot of strength from the heroine and caused her pain. Adam, who managed to save his beloved, landed softly. He carefully put the girl on the bench. She was still unconscious there. Adam quietly asked her for forgiveness. Sinclair stroked Lily's face affectionately. He had come too late. The guy immediately directed his healing ability to the girl's hand, wounded by a shrapnel. Then he carefully covered her with his cloak. Now she is fine, and nothing can harm her anymore. At this moment, Lily slowly opened her eyes and saw a familiar mask in front of her. She disoriented and asked if she was still alive. Adam pulled back. The girl grabbed his hand, asking why he was pretending to be either a bad guy or a good guy, and whether he really saved her. The guy answered briefly that he was just nearby. Adam was sorry that he could not reveal his identity to Lily, otherwise she would be in danger. He called the metal plate towards him and ordered the girl to rest a little and then go to shelter in order to evacuate in time. Adam took off as Lily jumped up from the bench, begging him to wait. The girl looked at the retreating savior, and did not understand why she had a strong feeling that the guy seemed so familiar to her, although she had met him for the first time. Standing on a plate far above the ground, Adam used his cloning ability. He gave his clone the powers of the Heart of Light and the power of the Snow Woman, which will allow him to create ice and heal others. The guy thought about it, and decided that it would be better for the clone to be in the form of a girl. His silent copy immediately transformed into a beauty with a rabbit mask on her face, long blue hair and a playful outfit. The third member of the judges' organization has been born, and her name is Charlie Rabbit. Adam ordered Charlie to go to the epicenter of events and save those who are in danger. To prevent the number of victims and wounded from increasing, Charlie unquestioningly went to follow the instructions. Sinclair turned around. Now all that remains is to deal with this huge rat. A new heroine has appeared on the horizon, Explosive Fist A rank, a fiery brunette with incredible power. The reporter, seeing her, delightedly introduced her to the audience. After all, this is the same famous heroine who was last seen in Louisville several years ago. Commentators looked at the heroine's face in close-up with admiration. Some did not know about her at all. The girl smiled sweetly at the camera and waved her hand, causing a new outburst of admiration. Adam, seeing that heroes had appeared who were ready to take everything upon themselves, decided to simply observe the situation, assess their strength, and then make his own decision. The rat came closer to Explosive Fist, who fearlessly assessed the monster. The rat was huge and quite strong, which means it was an excellent punching bag, just for warming up. The alien immediately released a new wave of ultrasound. Green Storm, hovering nearby, warned Fist about the danger of the sound. But the heroine was not afraid. She had already taken a fighting stance. After all, if she didn't try, how would she know whether she could cope or not? The wave hit right where the girl was standing, causing a deafening explosion. The journalist commented with admiration on what was happening. Explosive Fist could have easily dodged the attack of the Soul Eater rat, but she chose to face it head-on, as expected from her fighting style. When the dust cleared, only fragments of the roof remained at the explosion site. The rat, groaning, walked in that direction. A heroine literally appeared out of thin air right behind her. She gathered her strength and swung to deliver a crushing blow. The full power of the girl's abilities fell on the rat, and the monster flew away with the speed of the wind. The rat, squealing deafeningly, found itself lying far below on the asphalt, electrical discharges running through its body. Explosive Fist laughed. Why doesn't the monster scream anymore? The maddened alien bared his huge sharp fangs. The heroine landed next to him, grinning.